Our story begins with a young man remembering his father telling him that he should live for the clan, that he should desire nothing for himself, and remain by his brother's side like a shadow. The scene then reveals a breathtaking sight, a knight fighting alone against the most powerful commander on the continent. A long-haired man found it all quite interesting, as if it were only to be expected. The young man kneeling on the ground was named Cyan Vert, while the long-haired man was called Boris. Boris laughed idly. Cyan demanded to know who had ordered Boris to do something like this. Was it the emperor? Boris did not answer. Instead, he remarked that the rumors about Cyan were true, calling Vert the Mist Assassin. The Mist was an organization opposed to the Knights, and Boris intended to eliminate Vert quickly. Cyan felt no fear, and declared that nothing would remain of Boris. Boris replied that it would be better if Vert used his secret power. Cyan thought he needed to escape somehow and reveal the real culprit to his brother. Since Boris had erected a magical barrier, Cyan Vert decided he would simply destroy it. Suddenly someone appeared and told Cyan that it was enough. Cyan was startled, remembering his father's words. His brother was an extension of the clan, and he should live for the clan. Ashel Vert's success would also be his own, and there stood Cyan Vert's brother. The one responsible for everything was Ashel Vert. Ashel approached his brother, assuming he was confused. Cyan stood there, stunned, trying to understand what was happening. Ashel told him he had played his role very well, but now he wanted to lift the burden from Cyan's shoulders. Cyan did not understand and asked if he had done something wrong. Ashel thought he was joking and revealed that, with that strange mist, Cyan was nothing more than a mere assassin. He did not even seem human anymore. Ashel considered his brother a sinner. Cyan was outraged and confused. The struggle for imperial succession, the incursion against the demonic army, the war to unify the continent. Cyan had helped his brother achieve all of it. Serving his brother had been his entire life. He refused to be cast aside like a dog. He no longer cared about his own life. He would use everything he had at that moment to destroy Ashel, unleashing an overwhelming amount of mana. Everyone was left speechless. Cyan thought Ashel's decision to kill him out of fear was utterly foolish and disgraceful. Naturally, Ashel did not take that well, and they began to fight. Cyan knew that if he could strike Ashel even once, he would not be able to regenerate. However, Boris made his move. Ashel was not alone. Ashel pierced Cyan through with his sword, revealing that he had known from the beginning that Cyan was a demon. He had never trusted his younger brother. Pulling the sword free, he kicked Cyan to the ground like trash and turned his back on him. Cyan lay there lamenting, unable to believe that this was his end. What a foolish life it had been. Yet he rose again, burning with hellish fury, but he failed to strike Ashel from behind. Suddenly, Cyan heard someone shout, calling him young master. He woke up in shock as a girl asked how long he planned to keep sleeping. He recognized her. Her name was Emily. He could not understand why she was there. He had not seen her in 20 years, and she looked exactly the same as when he last saw her. He recognized the place. It was his bedroom from when he was younger. Then it dawned on him. He had become a child again. Emily asked if he did not want to train. Cyan was utterly confused. The scene then shifted to the Vert Duchy. He was certain he had traveled back in time, 27 years into the past, 1 year before entering the academy. Every year, the duchy held a training session. Duke Vert, his father, attended the event, making it a grand occasion. Cyan's opponent was Kranz Vert, essentially his half-brother. His mother was Margareth Urzeth, the wife of Cyan's father. In the end, Kranz always received more attention. Cyan was the bastard son. He was beaten badly in that fight and became a laughingstock. After that, his father stopped paying attention to him. Even Emily had asked him to give up. Now remembering everything, Cyan picked up the rapier and found it heavy, realizing his strength was the same as it had been back then. It was no illusion. He had truly returned to the past. Kranz continued to provoke him, but Cyan saw an opportunity to change the future. The Duke began the match, and Kranz charged at him. Smiling confidently, Kranz tried to strike, but he was far too slow. Cyan swiftly dodged. Kranz grew furious, yet Cyan quickly forced him to drop his rapier and kicked his leg. Kranz fell to the ground in pain. Margareth was worried. Cyan remembered how Kranz used to mistreat him at that age. The oppression had even continued at the academy. He wanted to cut the evil at its root. In this life, he would forge his own path. Kranz was defeated. The Duke summoned Cyan, and even cleared his schedule to see him. Cyan was assigned a high-ranking knight named Yulkin as his escort. Margareth looked furious, and Cyan rather enjoyed it. Even asking her if Kranz was alright, she was outraged by his boldness, and called him a monster. Margareth believed bastards should not be treated well, insulting his mother and saying he should be out on the streets begging for food. She crossed the line, and Cyan felt the urge to kill her. At the same time, he thought it would be better to make her suffer. He calmly informed her that he would be attending the academy alongside Kranz. She did not understand what he meant. Cyan then remarked that if she wished for her son to keep all his limbs intact, she had better be careful. Furious, she tried to slap him, but Yulkin stopped her, stating that the Duke was in a hurry and could not be kept waiting. The two continued on their way. Cyan loved every moment of it. In the end, even the Duke's wife could not command the night. Soon after, Cyan entered his father's study and greeted him. His father's name was Willius Vert. He invited his son to sit. Willius was the great feudal lord of Volius, though the world knew him by another name. Willius was called the guardian of the continent, the hero who had held back the demonic invasion for many years. He possessed immense magical power and ancient wisdom, bearing tremendous responsibility until his death fighting the army of the Demon Kingdom. Willius sought peace for the continent. However, Cyan's memories of Willius were different. Cyan had lived his life serving others, like a fool. Willius recalled seeing Cyan dodge the sword earlier. Noticing how the boy had looked directly at the sword's path, he wanted to know how his son had learned to wield a blade. Cyan explained that he had not learned from anyone, he had simply practiced alone every night. Willius had never seen Cyan show interest in fencing before, and told him he should not hide his abilities. Cyan excused himself by saying he did not want to attract attention. Willius was truly surprised by his son's performance, though he felt Cyan's actions after Kranz fell were unnecessary. Cyan believed his father was testing his abilities, so he explained that he simply wanted to prove to himself that he was better than Kranz, even if they shared the same blood. Willius liked the boy's answer. He had not known Cyan was so talented, and he was delighted, believing that one day Cyan would become an excellent and reliable support for Ashel. That caught Cyan off guard. He had no intention of becoming Ashel's aide again, especially seeing how obsessed his father was with Ashel. In any case, his father wanted to reward him for the duel, and said he would grant him whatever he asked. Cyan, determined to ruin everything Ashel tried to accomplish, made his request. The scene shifted to Emily, who stood there jaw-dropped. Cyan had asked to be sent to the front lines. Nothing was decided yet, but Emily thought he had completely lost his mind. She warned him that the place was filled with terrifying, malevolent demonic beasts. Valius, the western fief of the Ushif Empire, was the only place on the entire continent referred to as the front lines. The Lamea Valley was known as the Vanguard, a brutal battlefield against demons that had raged for hundreds of years. Though Cyan's father initially opposed the idea, he gave him a condition. Cyan would have to prove himself worthy of going to Lamea Valley within a month. Cyan did not know what criteria his father would use to judge him worthy, but he resolved to increase his physical strength as much as possible. He still retained the battle instincts he had before his regression, and he also possessed a small amount of magic. All he needed to do was train. Suddenly, a girl burst into his room, shouting his name. It was Alice. She began shaking him, demanding to know if he had gone insane. She had heard about the request he made to their father, and believed that defeating Kranz had gone to his head. She dragged him to the rooftop, and the scene shifted to the two of them standing there. She declared that she would allow him to go to the front lines if he could endure her attacks for 3 minutes. Poor Cyan thought she was going too far. In any case, she asked whether he was after the family title. That was when he understood why she was acting that way. But he had no interest in the title. They drew their swords. Cyan felt that the day had become completely chaotic. Alice was incredibly fast. He managed to block her strike, leaving her shocked. She was going all out against her 7-year-old brother. She was stunned. He was using a light blade while she wielded a longsword. She assumed it had been luck, and concluded that he simply had good intuition. Cyan, however, was worried. As she launched multiple strikes at him, he blocked every one of them. He then placed his sword right in front of her face, surprising Alice. But her blade was also dangerously close to him. He stepped back. That could have ended badly. He might have been injured, and she could have died. The mist swordsmanship he once mastered was designed to kill swiftly. Fighting without killing was difficult for him. He lacked sufficient strength, and just wanted the 3 minutes to end. They were both nearing their limits. Alice suddenly called upon the power of earth and wind, alarming him, and used water blade magic. Cyan concluded that his sister truly intended to kill him. Alice refused to lose at any cost. He charged at her, trusting that Yulkin would intervene, and just as he expected, Yulkin appeared. The knight quickly separated them, scolding Alice for going too far against her 7-year-old brother. Cyan felt relieved. Alice soon realized what she had done, and apologized, saying she had lost her temper because she was worried about him and did not want him going to the front lines. Cyan understood his sister's feelings. Alice was elite among elites. She had earned perfect scores at the Royal Academy, where the most talented children in swordsmanship, magic, and other disciplines gathered. Cyan also thought she was beautiful. She was even called a child of God. From a young age, she had trained in swordsmanship, and many believed she would one day become the guardian of the continent alongside Ashel Vert. However, she eventually died after joining the Knights of Light. Cyan had missed his sister dearly, and this time, he would not let her die. Alice then remembered that Yulkin was the Duke's guardian knight, and had supposedly left for war. Yulkin explained that he was currently assigned to protect the young master by order of the Duke, though he was not supposed to reveal that, as it was confidential. Cyan had already sensed Yulkin's presence since leaving his father's office. He had been watching everything in secret. Suddenly, Cyan fell asleep in his sister's arms. The scene shifted to the next day. Alice had returned to the academy. She had only come home to visit their parents before graduation. Cyan was doing push-ups, trying to strengthen his body. 10 was his limit. He remembered how confident he used to be in his strength and felt a pang of nostalgia. Emily arrived, saying that Alice had sent him a package, but it smelled terrible. It was hellhound blood, which he had asked Alice to obtain. It was a rare item found only in Lamea Valley, though it was also sold on the black market. Most people believed demon blood was poisonous because of its stench, but in truth, it increased the strength and mana of whoever consumed it. Very few people knew that. Emily could not understand why he would drink something like that. Cyan gulped it down in one go, recalling Emily's terrible cooking and thinking this was no worse. In the end, he was pleased to be growing stronger. He then told Emily he was going out for a walk. He headed to a place he had not visited in a long time, taking advantage of the fact that Yulkin was busy writing reports. Cyan clearly remembered that when Ashel received a divine revelation from the god of light, Lumendel, it was said that an ancient temple was hidden somewhere in the mountains. Cyan had not believed it at first, but it was a place where mana flowed in high concentration, and he soon confirmed it was real. At that moment, only he knew of it. Determined to undermine his older brother in any way possible, he began to act. He opened a passage and noticed that it differed from the last time he had been there. It was an ancient temple that had once served the god of light, Lumindel, before the land's history was erased due to the emergence of the demon god of war 300 years ago. Its location in the mountains just behind the castle seemed utterly random. There, he found what would one day belong to Ashel. In the year 999 of the Foundation era, humanity finally defeated the demonic army in Velius. The demons had been far stronger than humans, but humanity discovered ancient relics known as divine weapons, which allowed them to achieve victory. One of those relics was Duran Dark, a sacred sword blessed by the god of light, Lumindel. That sword had been the greatest factor in humanity's victory, and also the reason for Cyan's death. Somehow Cyan believed Duran Dark was connected to his regression. He touched the sword, but nothing happened. Annoyed, he kicked it, his mood souring. He decided he would do what he came for and leave. Then he noticed something at first glance that appeared to be the sword's shadow, but that was impossible. It was not a shadow. Where there is light, there must also be shadows. It was actually a hidden path leading to another chamber beyond the altar of light. He entered, and was delighted to see his own sword, the demonic blade Karam. The moment he grabbed it, an overwhelming energy began to surge. Cyan greeted it as if saying hello to an old friend. The blade had not yet awakened, but even so, he felt a familiar sensation and an urge to kill something. Then he heard the sword's voice asking if he was not afraid, wondering whether he understood what it meant to awaken the blade. Cyan Vert simply believed that the sword belonged to him at that moment. The demonic blade made it clear it was too late for the boy to regret it. From now on, Cyan's body belonged to it. The boy did not look frightened. He grabbed the sword by the neck, noticing it felt different. The sword itself was shocked, unable to understand how he could even touch it. Cyan wore a Machiavellian smile and declared that the sword belonged to him. The feminine figure manifested by the blade tried to push him away, demanding to know who he was. She asked if he was the successor and sensed Eru's aura within him. Cyan confirmed that he was Eru's successor. Since her former master had returned, he ordered her to kneel immediately. Kairam, however, judged him to be nothing more than a child and refused. Without hesitation, they began to duel. Cyan realized there was no other way, and he would never allow her to dominate his body again. Using his control over the demonic sword, he forced Kairam to the ground. He questioned why she would not simply accept him. She accused him of being arrogant. Cyan used the demonic sword control once more, pinning her down and asking if she intended to keep resisting. Eventually, she yielded. After he exerted control again, she finally began addressing him as master. His objective complete, Cyan assumed he should return. He had been gone from the castle for too long. Kairam expressed that it had been a long time since she had breathed fresh air, and felt such a refreshing sensation. She asked for her master's name, and he introduced himself. She could not believe that Eru had chosen a child like Cyan. He explained that this had happened in his previous life. The sword did not understand, so he clarified that he had already died once. Cyan then approached the sacred sword that would one day belong to his brother. It was still dormant. He told Karam that the sleeping blade would wait 20 years before awakening. Karam assumed he was trying to predict the future. Suddenly, Cyan cut off a piece of the sword's hilt, leaving Karam utterly confused. With a sinister grin, he remarked that he might be able to have some fun with that in the future. The scene shifted to a carriage arriving. The day had finally come, and Cyan could hardly believe it. He greeted the Duke. Willius asked if his son still intended to go to the front lines, declaring that he would not interfere with his decision. Cyan assured him that his heart already resided on the battlefield. Yulkin then presented a magical scroll. Cyan was curious about what was happening. Suddenly, monsters emerged from the scroll. A hellhound, a low-ranking creature. Cyan concluded that his father had carefully prepared a proper test. The Duke wanted the boy to take responsibility for his choices by proving his resolve and passing the challenge. Earlier, Yulkin recalled Cyan asking to spar with him. Cyan explained that only 3 days remained before the deadline of his promise to his father. He wanted to experience a real battle. Yulkin suggested he ask Kranz instead, but Kranz always fled whenever he saw Cyan. Seeing the situation, Yulkin agreed. Cyan thanked him, but he had another favor to ask. With a devilish gaze, he ordered his guardian not to inform his father about their duel. It was an order. Suddenly, he charged at his knight with full force. Yulkin blocked the strike, but was astonished. It was far too heavy for a mere child. Cyan was also incredibly fast. He leapt, and Yulkin barely had time to block again. Their clash was intense. After yet another blocked attack, Cyan realized he truly could not defeat Yulkin. He thanked the knight for helping him train. Yulkin, impressed, told the boy he had done well. Cyan had grown tremendously, and would surely overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. The scene shifted to Cyan fighting a hellhound charging toward him. Without hesitation, he slashed the beast. He knew he lacked the raw strength to engage in prolonged combat with monsters, so he had to finish it quickly. He leapt into the air, hurled his blade, and impaled the hellhound, astonishing everyone present. Willius approved of what he saw. Cyan, however, disliked the waste. He could have filled several bottles with that monster's blood, but he could not do so in front of others. The Duke applauded his son and declared that he would see him on the front lines. Cyan thanked his father. Karam then questioned him, asking whether she looked like a mere kitchen knife. Cyan assured her she was indeed a demonic sword. Karam demanded that he use her. She needed blood to grow stronger and begged for just a sip of the hellhound's blood. Cyan told her not to worry. He would wield her soon. Soon after, ogres appeared nearby. The Duke ordered a defensive line to be formed and commanded the soldiers to eliminate the ogres immediately. The troops used their magic to immobilize neutralize the creatures before launching a coordinated assault. The ogres stood no chance. Cyan observed everything from horseback. Emily accompanied him and thought he was being cruel by bringing her into such a dangerous environment. Cyan, however, felt a strange nostalgia being there. The Duke asked how he felt. Cyan pretended to be nervous. Willius warned him not to lower his guard. Cyan promised to remember that, but he knew that on the front lines, anything could happen. Battles often lasted 3 or 4 consecutive days, each with its own strategic details, relying on capable knights to repel the monsters attempting to breach the lines. Cyan had his own tent, positioned farther from the main battlefield, making it relatively safer. However, with the guards so disciplined, it was difficult for him to secretly feed Karam. He noticed Emily trembling. The Duke had told them they never knew when death would come. Cyan thought she should return home, but she refused, insisting he could not manage without her. Surrounded by monsters, who else could care for her young master, if not her? She then reminded him it was time to eat. She had forgotten the cloak he had requested. Cyan was astonished. She treated him, her master, in a strangely casual manner. Later, he placed a doll resembling himself in his bed, believing the disguise would suffice. Emily awoke and asked if he planned to train there. He confirmed it, worried he had disturbed her sleep. She said the Duke would surely be proud. Cyan prepared to leave and instructed her to stay alert. If anyone asked, she should say he was asleep. With nighttime security reinforced, slipping away would not be easy. He activated the third movement of dense mist, moving at incredible speed. He remembered that countless monsters roamed nearby. This was the perfect place to feed his sword. Drawing Karam, who could already smell the heavy scent of blood, she told her master she could barely restrain herself and urged him to cut something immediately. Cyan began slicing through monsters, using the storming mist advanced technique. He pierced a hellhound and extracted some of its blood, drinking it with delight. Both he and the sword felt overwhelming satisfaction. Cyan decided they should continue training. The night was long and monsters were plentiful. Karam grew increasingly excited. The scene then shifted to a carriage traveling along the road. A man warned a young girl that the front lines were dangerous and they should turn back, but she refused to be treated like a child. She was the royal princess of the empire, and she intended to help her father no matter what. Her subordinate looked awkwardly at her, unsure how to respond. Then she remembered that she had heard the youngest son of Duke Vert was also on the front lines, and he seemed to be about the same age as that girl. The royal princess had not expected that. The subordinate explained to the royal princess that the Duke's son had volunteered. She also thought the princess should try to befriend him, but the royal princess considered that foolish and said she was going to get some sleep. Even so, she still wanted to know the Duke's son's name. The subordinate then informed her that it was Cyan Vert. The scene shifted to a harpy being cut down. It was Willius, who was worried about whether there were many injured. He was informed that everyone was fine, and thus the battle came to an end. Cyan appeared, sheathing his sword and sighing. The Duke wanted to know how he felt about living on the front lines. Cyan simply told his father that he was learning a lot. In the end, Willius assumed the boy wanted to return, thinking he had endured for a long time and feeling proud of his son. Cyan was stunned by that. He hadn't expected it. Willius then turned his back and said he wanted to talk to Cyan the next day. It was the first time Cyan had seen his father act so kindly. The scene then shifted to a worm emerging from the ground. Cyan Vert was fighting it. They only appear in the deeper parts of the valley. Karam judged that her master was having difficulty and asked him to let her handle it. Cyan felt that the demonic sword was looking down on him, but she explained that it wasn't like that, and that once she was finished, she would return control to him. The worm immediately regenerated from any wound. Cyan realized Karam was right. He had already been there for a month. He had drunk a lot of beast blood, but he felt it wasn't enough. Seeing he had no other choice, Cyan accepted Karam's request. The ninth form of the intense mist was used, the manifestation of the demonic sword. She unleashed numerous slashes against the worm, trying to tear the creature apart, ultimately destroying it with a technique. The scene then shifted to the Duke and his soldiers discovering a creature Cyan had killed. Noticing that the beast hadn't been dead for long and sensing the powerful mana, they began to suspect that a demon had done it. The Duke declared that if it was a demon, they could not ignore it. They should inspect the area and burn the corpses. Willius examined the cuts. They looked familiar, yet at the same time it felt like deja vu. Then Ilkum found something the Duke needed to see. It was a death worm. The Duke wondered who could have killed such a creature in that state. Willius began to suspect it might have been the organization. In the end, it had all been the work of the manifestation of the demonic sword, which allowed Karam to dominate Sion's body so she could use her true powers. If he lowered his guard, she could take over his body forever. Just using her to defeat a monster left him stressed. Still, he ended up drinking its blood, which was beneficial for him. He stood up, feeling pain throughout his body. When Karam said she understood everything, she declared that he only had the appearance of a child. He neither acted nor spoke like one. He endured her remarkably well, as if he were proficient at it, as though he had trained for at least 30 years, possessing mist sword techniques. She also remembered him saying he had died once. At that moment, Karam was certain he was a regressor. Cyan was completely unsettled. After all, he had already told her that. However, Karam was indignant because he had never properly explained. Cyan was too lazy to elaborate. Karam also judged that killing someone like Cyan would be extremely difficult. If she had to guess, she believed he had been killed by the wielder of Duran Dark. Assuming he had been betrayed, Cyan wanted to know how she reached that conclusion. Karam thought so because he had looked at the holy sword as if it were a piece of trash, so she was certain he sought revenge. In any case, she wanted him to keep something in mind. If she caught him slipping, she would would devour him. At that moment, Cyan flicked the demonic sword, telling her to know her place. He was no fool. In the end, Karam didn't change at all. Cyan left and noticed a commotion among the soldiers. Emily saw that Cyan was awake, and he asked her if something had happened. She informed him that high-level monster corpses had appeared. Cyan was taken aback, thinking they had found the worm. Emily commented that it had been a long time since they had seen something like that. Cyan asked if there was anything else. She didn't understand, so he clarified that he wanted to know if the soldiers had said anything more. Suddenly, Yulkin appeared, informing Cyan that the Duke wanted to see him. Cyan felt screwed. He hadn't taken care of the corpses. He didn't understand why the soldiers had shown up out of nowhere. He had wanted to enjoy a peaceful life before going to the academy, but his plan was falling apart. The scene then shifted to him greeting the Duke. Willius welcomed his son and asked him to sit. Cyan wondered what excuse he would invent if his father asked about the monsters. The Duke then asked what the boy had been doing the previous night. Cyan simply replied that he had gone to bed because he was tired. After hearing that, Willius found it strange, because the traces he had seen on the monsters resembled his son's sword techniques. Still, he thought he might be overthinking it. Cyan then asked why his father was asking, since it was hard to believe a mere boy had killed a giant worm. His father did not answer. The Duke was certain the boy had heard about what had happened the previous night. He made it clear that they were paying attention because it seemed like the work of a secret assassin organization called the Mist. Cyan listened as his father explained that the organization had existed since ancient times. Their objective was unknown, but they assassinated nobles under the excuse of purification. They were known for leaving black mist wherever they passed. One day, that organization disappeared. They hadn't been seen for 3 years. The gigantic worm from the previous night had been covered in that black mist, something left behind by Eru, the god of shadows, the deity worshipped by the mist. That was their source of power. If the Duke's theories were correct, the mist had killed the worm and the other beasts. Cyan was astonished, as his father's investigation was completely accurate. In any case, Willius told his son to be careful, and said he would notify the Empire so that an official investigation could begin. Even so, the boy didn't know whether his father would believe him. The Duke himself didn't think it was possible that the boy was involved. Then he asked where the boy would be going that day. The boy replied that he had heard His Majesty would be paying a visit. Willius confirmed it and said he had a favor to ask of the boy. The scene then shifted to a soldier blowing a trumpet, announcing that His Majesty had arrived. Willius bowed to greet him, but the king told him not to do that, since they were friends. Then he saw Cyan, who was also bowing. Cyan introduced himself to the king, who was surprised that the boy was in such a dangerous place. That was the favor Willius had asked of Cyan, to present himself as his son. In his past life, he had always been confined to the mansion whenever the emperor visited his father. Now he realized he was gradually earning his father's trust. At that moment, the king declared that he would like to introduce someone as well. A girl stepped out of the carriage, announcing that she was the 5th princess of the Ushif Empire. Her name was Arin Severus. Cyan remembered her as the tragic 5th princess. Willius had also informed Cyan that he should attend to Princess Arin for a day, which left the boy completely confused. The Duke told him not to be surprised, explaining that all he needed to do was accompany the girl. They were the same age and would see each other again at the academy. Cyan remembered seeing her at the academy in his past life. The Duke hoped the two of them could become friends. It wouldn't be bad to have a friendship with someone from the Empire. In any case, Cyan wanted none of it. Still, he understood his father's intentions. The Duke wanted the boy to have a friendship like the one he himself had with the Emperor. But in the end, Arin was not the right person for that. They couldn't be friends. Cyan simply knew what would happen in the future. It irritated him deeply, yet he had to obey. Suddenly, Arin asked why the river was so red. Cyan told her that it was the River of Blood. It was a current that flowed throughout the valley of Lamea. There was no natural reason for it to be red. It was that way because wounded beasts would leap into the river, and their blood would mix and flow with the water. It turned red due to the decomposition of mana. Arin was completely shocked to hear that. Cyan also told her that the beasts drank that water. She found it horrifying, and asked what lay at the end of the river. He explained that it was the demon realm, where demons lived. He deliberately tried to scare her a little, finding it amusing. Suddenly, a light appeared. The princess grew curious, and Cyan informed her that the light signaled approaching beasts. She became frightened, while the Duke ordered that His Majesty be protected. However, the Emperor declared that he did not need such treatment. He wasn't there for a stroll, and was already growing bored. Willius accepted it. The Emperor joined the battle against the beasts. The Duke then called Cyan to fight as well. Arin was astonished to learn that the boy also fought. He confirmed it and told her to stay behind, suggesting she hide. In truth, she wanted to go with him. Cyan couldn't understand it since they were the same age. She thought it would be fine to accompany him. He pointed out that they weren't going to a playground, but she was stubborn, so he called Yulkin, who informed the princess of the Empire that he would replace the royal knights and escort her. Seeing Cyan's guard, she thought it was reckless, and disliked how she was being treated. Cyan, in his cold manner, made it clear to the insufferable girl that because of her stubbornness, several knights might die. He asked whether she would take responsibility for the lives lost. Frightened, she decided to turn back, and Cyan left with the others. A massive creature appeared and invaded the area. Willius made it clear that no one was to retreat. His Majesty had to be protected, and the monsters were to be slain without sparing a single one. The Emperor's name was Dione Severus. He had 2 wives, Diana Quizet Roselle, who had passed away, and Cassandra Nepellus, the second wife, regarded as the empire's prominent judicial authority. The former empress gave birth to the first and second princesses. The current empress gave birth to the third and fourth princes. However, Arin, the fifth princess, was an illegitimate child born to a peasant mistress. People treated her like a scarecrow of a princess because of her mixed blood. Yet she did not care how others viewed her. She fulfilled her duties as a member of the royal family and devoted herself to her studies. In the end, she was falsely accused of treason and expelled from the royal family and the empire. Rumors said she died alone from illness on some remote island. Because of that, people called her the tragic princess. If she had been greedy, she might have lived a happy life. It would have been better for her to live without any ambition. Cyan had told all of this to Karim, who did not fully understand. The scene shifted to a monster being electrocuted. The one responsible was the emperor himself, using a technique called sacred lightning, which obliterated the creature. Emperor Dion was known to hold an 8-star ranking in magic. If he had not become emperor, he would have been the head of the Mages Association. Later, the scene shifted to the emperor having a drink, with the duke beside him. The duke did not drink, and even apologized, explaining that he did not do so while on the front lines. The emperor recalled when the duke had asked about the current atmosphere in the empire, mentioning a surge in noble assassinations that had frightened many. Willius asked if there was any pattern to the killings. Dion confirmed that there was. All the assassinated nobles had been corrupt officials. The Black Mist had also been present at every crime scene. He then asked whether the duke had any ideas. Willius informed Dion that he had found traces of the Black Mist there the previous day. He believed the followers of the Black Mist had begun to move again. Dion agreed that it made sense and asked the duke to investigate further. He appreciated that Willius was cleaning up the garbage. He could not stand by and watch the people's anxiety grow. However, something else troubled the emperor. He believed that a certain noble was trying to spread the idea that the incidents were the fifth princess's fault. Willius did not understand. The emperor made it clear to everyone that such rumors were absurd, but it seemed there was a group trying to use his daughter. Thus, Dion had a request, not as an emperor, but as a friend. If he were to die first, he asked the duke to take care of that child. Willius assured him that he would follow his majesty's wishes to the end. Dion was grateful for his loyalty. The scene then shifted outside, where it was raining heavily. Emily was surprised, and Cyan did not understand why. She pointed out that he had been escorting the princess and suddenly stopped. She was certain the boy would never get married acting like that. Cyan made it clear that he would trust her while he was away. Emily found it strange. There was no reason for him to go train in such rain. He told her not to worry and to get some rest. Another hooded figure appeared, startling Emily. It was Arin Severus. She wanted to know where the boy was going. She apologized and said she wished to talk for a while. When Emily realized it was the fifth princess, she broke into a wide smile. Arin asked Cyan how long it had been since he arrived there. He replied that it had been a month, and asked why she had sought him out. Arin asked Emily to excuse them for a moment. Emily left with a silly grin, hoping they would have a good time together. Cyan thought Emily was going crazy. He was only 10 years old. Arin then apologized for what had happened earlier, saying she felt she had acted in a way unbefitting of a princess. He told her not to worry about it and apologized as well for being rude. She admitted that in the end, he had been right. He was well recognized by many people, and she thought he was more mature than she was. Cyan didn't quite understand, but he was observing her personality. She then asked if he would also be entering the academy. Before she could suggest they become friends, he cut her off, saying he was sorry but he could not help her. Arin was left stunned. He made it clear that if she had come there to befriend him, she should leave immediately, but she explained that she only wanted to have a good relationship with him. She thought he had been extremely rude, almost psychopathic, and asked whether he believed she was nothing more than a hollow shell of a princess. In any case, she understood there was no real benefit in being friends with her, so she decided to leave, thinking that at the very least they could have talked a little. But he was completely different from Ashel. At that moment, Cyan wanted to understand what she was getting at. He grabbed her by the arm. Arin immediately asked if he had gone mad. He demanded to know how she knew his brother. Arin explained that she had met his older brother when she visited the Royal Academy the previous year. Ashel had advised her not to care about what others said about her, and to fulfill her role as a princess. Cyan's eyes widened. He didn't trust Ashel. In Cyan's mind, his older brother was nothing more than a manipulator. He was certain this was part of a plan to bring Arin down, that it was only the beginning. He was about to warn her about something, but they were interrupted by Emily, who told them they needed to run. Suddenly, the tent was destroyed. The soldiers immediately prepared themselves, asking if their young master was safe. Emily was extremely worried about the two children. An ogre was attacking the area. Soon Willius and Dion were informed of what had happened. Advanced level demonic beasts had ambushed the vanguard camps near the border. Dion ordered the entire Imperial army to head to the vanguard camp immediately to ensure the safety of the fifth princess. At the same time, he wanted to know whom his daughter had gone to see. The scene shifted to Cyan, who saw death worms and ogres nearby. He was certain that for those beasts to be there, something had changed. He wondered if it was his fault. Emily was deeply worried and declared that she would never leave his side again. Cyan remembered how he had defended the fifth princess when his tent had been attacked in his past life. Back then, he had even killed the Demon King. There was no way he would die to a mere troll. Arin was worried about the knights in the camp, but Emily tried to calm her. The princess believed that everything happening was her fault. The royal knights reassured her that they were fine and would protect her to the end. Suddenly, Cyan saw something and told the knights to run. One of of the knights standing beside Aaron Severus was instantly crushed by a massive creature. Cyan stepped in front of Aaron to protect her. The troll caught Cyan's scent. It was clear the monster was targeting him. Cyan told the two girls that he would distract the troll and that they should run. Emily immediately fled with the fifth princess. The troll quickly swung at Cyan, but the boy slashed at it several times. He couldn't understand why advanced-level demonic beasts were being drawn to him. He was certain they sensed something within him. Karam then explained that he had drunk the blood of countless beasts to grow stronger. Naturally, he would reek to other demonic beasts. It would be strange if they didn't come after him. Cyan questioned why the demonic sword was only telling him this now, when she had already known. Karam realized he had simply forgotten. In any case, she wanted his body. He firmly grabbed her, silencing her as she questioned what he was doing. He told her to shut up, declaring that he didn't care how many monsters came after him. He then launched a full assault on the troll. Since no one was watching, he took the opportunity to drink some of the advanced-level demonic beast's blood. Then he noticed more trolls nearby. The sword remarked that he was about to have a feast. Suddenly, a dragon appeared. It began to roar, but the demonic sword informed Cyan that it was still a baby dragon. It had likely caught his scent. Cyan didn't think it was so bad. He used the manifestation of the demonic sword. He only wanted to evolve further. Karam assumed the boy needed that dragon. The scene shifted to a troll being repeatedly attacked. Dione Severus and the Duke had taken down several trolls, the last ones remaining. The Emperor asked how his daughter and Cyan were doing. The Duke apologized, saying he hadn't found either of them in the tent. Dione wasn't overly worried, knowing the Duke must also be concerned about his son. However, Willius did not appear worried about Cyan. He was certain the boy could handle himself. His real concern at that moment was Aaron. Dione thought his friend was being too cold, but Willius simply wanted his son to be able to take care of himself. Then a knight appeared, announcing that they had found his daughter. Aaron quickly ran to her father. The Emperor asked if she was hurt, but the fifth princess only begged them to save Cyan, believing he was fighting because of her. The Emperor told her to calm down and explain everything. Emily and the knight bowed before the king. The Duke demanded to know what had happened to his son. Emily began trembling. She had never seen the Duke like that before, but she explained that Cyan had acted as bait to save her and Aaron. The knight added that he remembered where the boy had been, and if given the order, would go with others to rescue the young master. Diane thought the Duke shouldn't waste time, but Willius refused. To the Emperor and the fifth princess's surprise, the Duke explained that they had to secure the situation first. If the camp fell, the beasts would invade the empire. They needed to rebuild and stabilize the area immediately to prevent further deaths. Emily remained worried about her young master. Willius declared that his son had fulfilled his role by helping the princess evacuate. Aaron couldn't accept that. Suddenly they heard a scream. They looked up and saw a dragon in the sky. Aaron couldn't understand what she was seeing. Cyan was on top of the dragon, and the scream had come from him. Creatures close to the creator were rare and noble beings. Inferior beings like humans could not approach them easily. It was an honor for Cyan to encounter such a superior and powerful creature, yet he couldn't understand why the dragon was flying over people when he didn't want to be seen. Arin was deeply worried. The Emperor was stunned. It was a dragon after all. He also wondered why Willius's son was riding one, and whether the Duke intended to save his child. At that moment, Cyan was lamenting. All he had wanted was to drink the dragon's blood. He had never imagined things would turn out like this. The scene shifted back slightly. Karam had made it clear that he needed to devour that dragon. However, trolls had appeared in front of her, blocking the way. She told them to move. They had no time to waste. She swiftly cut down the monsters, and then landed on the ground beside the dragon. She was certain it was not an adult dragon. Suddenly, the dragon launched an attack toward them. Karam grew furious at its behavior, presuming that it was practically spitting in their faces. Karam believed she had every right to drive the sword into the dragon's face. She slashed across its snout several times, making the dragon roar in fury before flinging her into the air. As she was about to fall, the only thing she could do was cling to the dragon, using the technique of the 8 trembling petals to carve into it once more. The dragon crashed down, yet she realized she was losing rhythm. She still hadn't defeated it. Just as she was about to finish everything, the dragon took to the skies again, trying to shake her off. She refused to fall for the same trick twice. However, the dragon suddenly attempted to flee. Unwilling to let that happen, she leapt toward the massive creature with all her strength. Meanwhile, Cyan thought he had used up all his luck just to encounter that dragon. At that moment, he urged the dragon to keep dodging, until he realized there was an incoming attack it wouldn't be able to avoid. And indeed, the dragon was struck, causing Cyan to lose his footing and fall. He had missed his chance for a grand feast. Karam demanded to know what the hell he was doing. He would end up dying. Cyan explained that he couldn't use the mist. If he did, they would burn him at the stake. The demonic sword warned that he would die anyway, but Cyan believed there was still a way out. With no other option, he chose to plunge into the filthy river below. He dove straight into the disgusting waters. The scene shifted to a demon observing the demonic dragon flying overhead. A rare sight. Another demon commented that the dragon was young and probably lost. Then the first demon noticed Cyan and wondered if he was human. That demon was none other than the Demon King, Valkyrion. Cyan's eyes widened. He remembered that voice clearly. It was etched into his mind. It belonged to someone he could never forgive. In the past, those who had witnessed Valkyrion said it was like gazing upon the incarnation of evil, and that was exactly what stood before him now. Valkyrion, receiving no response, asked if the boy wasn't going to answer him. He then questioned whether Cyan wished to fight. Cyan visibly tensed and attempted to attack, which made Valkyrion's eyes widen in surprise, before he burst into laughter. He revealed that he had heard humans were a species with infinite potential. Perhaps it was true. Kyram asked who that man was. Cyan told her it was the Demon King. She immediately knew that, in his current state, Cyan could not possibly defeat him. Cyan himself understood that it was impossible. All he could do was try to escape. His hands trembled. He wasn't certain he would survive against Valkyrion. Suddenly, the Demon King told him to relax. He couldn't possibly fight a child. To prove it, he even lay down on the ground, declaring that while he might be a bad man, he certainly didn't fight children. Cyan couldn't make sense of it. Valkyrion then asked if he was human. Cyan confirmed it. The Demon King asked how he had reached the demon realm. Cyan briefly explained that the river's current had carried him there. Valkyrion realized it was the boy's first time in the demon realm. He also noted that Cyan's aura was extremely strange, and asked whether the boy even knew who he himself was. Cyan replied that he was just a normal human. Valkyrion didn't argue, but he was certain the boy recognized him. Cyan pretended otherwise. In truth, Valkyrion thought it made sense. He himself had never seen a human before, so the boy couldn't have seen him either. Cyan then asked why Valkyrion was there. The Demon King explained that he had sensed a strange energy while on patrol. Cyan didn't understand why a Demon King would patrol his own lands. Valkyrion clarified that, as Demon King, he had to oversee the territory he governed. Then he suddenly realized what he had just admitted and asked Cyan to repeat it. Cyan did so calmly. Valkyrion was puzzled. The boy didn't seem shocked at all. That confirmed his suspicion that Cyan knew him from somewhere. He grew irritated. A child wouldn't normally react like that. Watching how foolish Valkyrion appeared, Cyan could hardly believe this was the Demon King. Then Cyan remembered. If events followed the same course as in the past, the demon invasion would happen soon. Yet Valkyrion didn't seem like someone who would initiate such a war. If this was his true self, what had changed him so drastically? Cyan asked Valkyrion what his greatest wish was. The Demon King found the boy bold for asking such a thing. After a pause, he said it was nothing extraordinary. He simply wanted people to live well and eat well. However, if anyone dared to stand in his way, he would kill them without hesitation. That was his duty as Demon King. Cyan felt disoriented hearing that. In that instant, he sensed the true monstrosity he remembered from his past life. It was restrained for now, but he was certain it could surface at any moment. He resolved to prevent whatever trigger had caused it before, so he proposed a deal. He warned Valkyrion that something would soon happen, something that would threaten the people he cared about, and potentially ignite a massive war between humans and demons. Valkyrion interpreted this as a suggestion that he would seek to seize human lands. Cyan asked him to promise that, no matter what happened, he would not start a war. Valkyrion saw no logic in the boy's words, and asked what Cyan could offer in return. Cyan promised that he would help him. No matter what befell the Demon King, Cyan would do everything in his power to assist him. Valkyrion stepped close, convinced the boy knew something. He demanded his name. Cyan introduced himself. In response, Valkyrion promised that he would not invade human lands, no matter what occurred. His wings unfurled as he reminded Cyan that a deal was a deal. The boy must uphold his side as well. Then he departed. The scene shifted to frightened knights. This was shortly after Cyan's agreement with the Demon King. Cyan appeared before them, and they believed it to be a miracle. The inspection team had found him lying nearby, and that was how he returned home. After that, he earned the nickname, the boy who survived a demonic dragon. They returned to the monastery at the Velius border, which was being used as a temporary military hospital. There, Seon was surprised by Auron. He thought things would settle down smoothly, but instead she asked whether he intended to claim her. He was completely confused and stated that he had no intention of being with anyone. Auron looked deeply saddened, believing that was only natural. In her mind, she was merely the powerless fifth princess. Cyan grew irritated. He knew Auron was considered the weak link of the imperial family, but the way she treated her own life only made that weakness more apparent. Yet he couldn't stop thinking about his damned older brother, the true cause of all these problems. In the end, Cyan chose to agree with her. He made it clear that at that moment she was not capable of providing any benefit since she possessed nothing. He tried to convey that he was not taking many political risks. He was practically like a blade while speaking to her, and he also made it clear that he would be watching until she obtained what was necessary. She wanted to know if he was being serious, and Cyan stated that it was not a promise, so she should not be disappointed in him. But she pretended to remain calm, explaining that she understood what he meant. In other words, she knew he wanted her to improve until she was worthy of being acknowledged by him. Cyan merely observed her, and Auron asked him to wait and see, because she would achieve what she desired. Cyan felt slightly embarrassed, but showed support in his own way. When she turned her back, she also thanked him for surviving, because that was important to her. Then the scene shifts to the forest. Around the rear lines, some men were walking, and they had obtained a kind of magic cube. Suddenly, a voice called out to one of the men, Reynold Crimson. He froze in shock, unable to move. The cube was a dimensional box. Those items were not allowed to be traded. It was an enchanted mana-infused item that allowed the user to store anything inside. It was basically the masterpiece of the Magic Council of the Kingdom of Garum. Cyan himself was there, declaring that he had spent the entire year observing Reynold Crimson, because things from the Empire had been disappearing. He realized that this was Reynold's method, and took the dimensional space for himself. Reynold then saw that the person standing before him was Cyan Vert. He wanted to understand how Cyan was able to do such a thing, as Cyan dumped a pile of items onto the ground from the box. Reynold extracted the blood of beasts, and transported it there by carriage, which then went to the borders. Cyan believed that the man had an informant. Reynold Crimson grew even more horrified, wanting to know what Cyan was implying, making it clear that he had no idea what the boy was talking about. But Cyan wanted Reynold to stop lying, because the blood of those monsters had already been sold on the black market. He believed that his older sister had obtained hellhound blood through Reynold, but he wanted to know who had leaked the information. He could not leave things as they were. While the boy reflected, Reynold tried to understand how Cyan had immobilized him, but he slowly began to regain movement. Then he attempted to kill the Duke's son using fire magic. By the time Cyan noticed, the man had already acted. A massive explosion occurred. Reynold felt momentary relief, thinking he would die. He realized that the rumors about the younger Vert were not exaggerated. As the flames began to subside, Reynold grew frustrated, realizing he had wasted a dimensional box. He had not expected things to go wrong, but to his despair, in less than a second, he lost his hand. Completely desperate, he noticed a black mist around him, which only confused him further. Suddenly, he saw Cyan completely unharmed, standing right in front of him. The boy thrust his hand into the man's throat and slammed him against the wall. Cyan told him to choose, reveal his roots, and expose his informant, dying in a relatively pleasant way, or face a fate worse than death. The boy spoke with a devilish smile on his face. The scene then shifts to the western border of Velius, where there was a trading post. Several merchants were talking, some exchanging boxes. One of them had Reynold's head, leaving two men completely stunned. Karam and Cyan were observing from a distance. The demonic sword asked whether Cyan would let those two men escape. The boy confirmed it, as it would serve as a warning. Reynold Crimson was a 7-star magic knight. He had been trading monster blood from the front lines without the knowledge of the Ushif Empire. The items he traded were sent to the Magic Council of the Kingdom of Garam, a place where people obsessed with magic gathered to research the origin and structure of magic itself, creating new spells and seeking to surpass the limits of humanity. For now, they only created practical artifacts like dimensional boxes, but Cyan did not even like to imagine what they might do in the future with beast blood. He needed to put a stop to it soon. Karim believed the boy was living for the sake of others, instead of himself, but the truth was that Cyan simply did not want more users of demonic beast blood. The scene then shifts to the Ushif Empire's mansion, where Ashel received news that Cyan had gone to the front lines with their father. A woman was in his bed, asking whether Ashel was talking about the brother he had from another mother. Ashel confirmed, stating that Cyan was concerning in many ways, and he concluded that he needed to see Cyan after such a long time. Next, the scene shifts to Emily celebrating because she was leaving the front lines. She believed the academy would not even compare, which for her was something positive, but for Cyan, a nightmare was about to begin. The academy was not a place that would meet Emily's expectations. In reality, it was a place full of political interests, a social group where envy and greed reigned, and connections mattered more than studies. Emily had heard that the academy's instructors were incredible. She did not even know what she should do, assuming she would find her Prince Charming there. Cyan realized that she was planning to attend the academy alongside him. Then the scene shifts to him walking calmly. Suddenly, Kranz ran into him and immediately began trembling. Before Cyan could say anything, Kranz ran away in complete desperation. Seeing the situation, Kranz asked who the idiot was that had just run off. Cyan told her that it was his half-brother, and that it was not something she needed to care about. Kairam noticed that in his family there were many opposites, and that the ones who fit best together were him and his father. But Cyan disagreed. The true opposite was someone else. He then entered the house, where several subordinates bowed and welcomed him. It was strange, because those servants previously would not even look at him, but now they were all courteous. It was as if his father himself were passing by. Many things had changed in a year, and the boy quickly realized that his hard work had paid off. As he tried to open the door, he felt an energy. He recognized that energy, and it made him tremble. Behind that door was that man. Ashel looked at him and smiled, saying it had been a while since they had seen each other. Cyan tried to remain calm, and when he did not respond, Ashel asked whether he had forgotten him. But for Ashel, it was normal. After all, it had been a very long time since they had last met. However, Cyan could not remain calm. In fact, he believed that this was the moment to kill his older brother. Kairam quickly restrained him, declaring that he needed to come back to his senses, because killing his older brother at that moment would bring more harm than good. With that, Cyan managed to regain control and greeted his older brother. Ashel noticed that Cyan still remembered him. Cyan stated that he could never forget his brother's face, as all smiled, ruffling his hair and showing relief. He also mentioned that he had heard Cyan's swordsmanship had improved greatly, and that he hoped Cyan would one day assist him on the battlefield. Hearing that almost made the boy lose control again, yet at the same time he agreed with Ashel. Then Ashel clarified that the main reason he was there was to see how his younger brother had been doing. In the end, Cyan began to calm down, since he already understood Ashel's intentions. He managed to maintain his rationality, while Emily was deeply irritated, as she was dealing with a lot of luggage. She opened the door and started complaining to her young master, but ended up bumping into Ashel, becoming extremely embarrassed. Ashel told her to do a good job taking care of his younger brother. Then he left. Emily nearly died of embarrassment. Cyan then told her to step outside for a moment. She did not understand, and the boy did not want to repeat himself, which frightened her. The scene then shifts to Cyan vomiting. He wanted to know why the demonic sword had stopped him. Karam believed that in truth he should be thanking her. Cyan knew that had been Karam's opportunity, but she did not want him to be mistaken. She wanted his hatred to grow, because that would be far better for her. He then began to smile, realizing that this was truly like the demonic sword. Next, the scene shifts to a subordinate. Wishing to speak with Ashel, he reported that he had found the location of the second young lady. She was in the northern part of the continent, in the land of the White Elves. Her name was Pruina. Ashel would never have imagined that she was among a race that hated outsiders. He supposed that this confirmed her affinity. The subordinate then asked whether something had put Ashel in a good mood, but his master questioned why he would think that. The subordinate explained that it seemed seeing Cyan had made him happier. However, Ashel made it clear that he was actually in a terrible mood. The subordinate grew frightened and apologized for not noticing. Ashel remembered Cyan's eyes, as if he had been looking at an enemy. Hoping he was mistaken, he admitted to himself that Cyan brought him many concerns. He would continue to observe his younger brother, wondering what Cyan was hiding. Then the scene shifts to the carriage being escorted. Emily reveals that she is very disappointed in her young master, but he explains that it wasn't his fault. He was only allowed to take one escort night to the academy. She thinks he should have told her beforehand. In any case, he tells her to behave herself, then announces that he is leaving, which leaves her confused until she realizes he was at least sad about going without her. That realization only makes her even more irritated. Cyan notices that his subordinate is not quite right in the head, and then he remembers when he was 8 years old. Back then, he came down with a terrible fever. It was Emily who carried him. She ran to the nearest house, desperately searching for someone who could help her young master. A man eventually opened the door. In the end, if it hadn't been for her, he would have died. To him, in some way, she was more than just a servant. He then reflects on the fact that 6 intermediate class knights are escorting just one person. He feels like something is bound to go wrong, and he hasn't even reached the academy yet. Later, one of the knights stops and informs their young master that it would be better to camp there for the night, claiming they are in the city of Saffron and would arrive the next morning. However, Cyan Vert already knows it's a lie. The city of Saffron has no forest like the one they are in. They are somewhere unsafe. He has already figured everything out. After being called, he steps out of the carriage, wanting to know who is behind this. No one answers, but one man is smiling. With overwhelming killing intent, Cyan declares that he asked a question. The smiling man says he doesn't need to know since he is going to die anyway. The knights draw their swords, making it clear that it's nothing personal. They will give Cyan a quick death. One of them rushes at the boy, but the head that goes flying is his own, not the boy's. Once again, Cyan demands to know who is behind it. The others are completely shocked. Cyan doesn't understand why they are standing still. He believes they were all waiting for something like this, but they can't believe a mere boy did such a thing. Suddenly, another man tries to attack him from behind, but no one can do anything. Everyone who attempts to strike him ends up suffering. One of them begins to cry, doubting whether Cyan is really only 11 years old. They begin to understand how he survived after fighting a dragon. At that moment, it becomes clear the mission will never succeed. One of the men collapses to the ground in terror. He is the only one left alive. Cyan wants to know everything. Trembling with fear, the man reveals that Margaret sent them. Cyan didn't expect it to be so easy to get the information. He then makes the man guide the horse, and the man explains that Kranz had asked his mother, so they all believe the mission was related to that. Cyan is outraged to learn it was Kranz. He resolves to teach him a lesson when they meet again. The man, terrified, asks what will happen to him, whether the boy intends to kill him. Cyan notices that the man doesn't seem particularly remorseful. The man explains that they tried to kill Cyan first, so he believes Cyan has every right to do the same. In the end, Cyan only wants him to drive while he reconsiders his decision. The man is deeply grateful. Eventually, they arrive at the central city of Saffron. The scene then shifts to Margaret destroying everything in rage. She can't believe what happened. The butler explains everything and informs her that Cyan left the city of Saffron 10 days ago. She is in shock and wants to know what the hell happened, but the butler believes they underestimated the young master. Margaret is furious that the butler couldn't even handle a child. The butler suspects someone interfered behind the scenes and asks for another chance, but Margaret thinks they should stop. She is already worried about her son's safety, remembering Cyan threatening her. She orders the butler not to act and not to let the information leak, killing anyone who knows about it if necessary. Behind the door, everything has already been heard. 10 days have passed since Cyan left Saffron. Brian, the name of the man who survived, behaves as Cyan's subordinate the entire time. He knows Margaret and the others are aware he is alive. At least he will make it safely to the academy. Still, he must decide what to do with Brian. When they arrive, Brian informs his young master. Seeing the place brings back memories for Cyan, though not good ones. The academy influenced him in many ways. He shows his family's crest, and the receptionist confirms his enrollment, instructing him to go to his dormitory and wait. In 2 days, he must attend the entrance ceremony and participate in the elemental test. The boy is confused. Suddenly, he receives information that shocks him. He asks if she is certain it's correct. Brian places his young master's belongings on the floor, equally stunned. That place is the royal corridor. No one from the Vert family has ever been assigned there. Cyan immediately grows suspicious. He also finds it strange that he has so little luggage. In any case, he has arrived at the academy, and Brian's role is done. Brian grows nervous and tells his young master to stay calm. Suddenly, the boy pulls out a bag full of money. Brian doesn't understand what is happening. Cyan says he believes he should pay him for his work. It's enough to start a new life. He tells him not to return to Velius. At that moment, Brian asks permission to serve him for the rest of his life, making it clear that he is a knight. That surprises the boy. Brian is a knight, but not a very good one, so he was given other roles, such as carriage driver. His father used to tell him that if he ever found someone he could trust and serve for the rest of his life, he should ask for permission without hesitation. Sion considers it foolish. Brian doesn't understand, but Sion asks what he would do if Sion stabbed him in the back someday. Brian says he wouldn't mind. Sion doesn't want a knight who would betray him. He also says he has no intention of attending the entrance ceremony. He only wants to participate in the elemental test. The scene then shifts to the director's office. He notes that there are many talented students in this year's elemental test, Aaron and a young man named Seth Chaharkan. He finds both interesting, but Sion Vert is on another level. Even his sister Alice, called a divine child, only reached 88% in the water element when she graduated. The one informing the director is an academy instructor named Sarika Nigrathi. The old man is surprised. Alice was known for her astonishing talent, and yet she doesn't come close to her younger brother. The director of the Royal Academy is Kundel Quizel. However, Sion's element is darkness, and his talents could deteriorate because of it. Still, the director tells Nigrithi that Sion has been placed in the royal corridor. She already knows, having spoken with other instructors. Then he informs her that it was the Emperor's order, leaving her completely bewildered. Then Quizel explains to her that Sion had saved the 5th princess from monsters at the border. Because of that, the Emperor wanted Sion to marry his daughter. Although the 5th princess was considered a mistake, marrying her to one of the Verts would change things. The instructor believed that conflicts over the succession would only intensify. The empire could end up divided because of it, possibly leading to a civil war. Quizel tells her not to overthink it. They can only watch. It is up to them to see whether the child will become the hero or the ruin of the empire. The scene then shifts to Sion. His elemental test result is 92%, which is very different from what he expected. It is nothing like his past life. He believes it is because of the demon beast's blood he drank. Suddenly a boy appears. Sion greets him, and the boy becomes visibly startled. He is the son of the Marquis Panarin from the kingdom of Garum, Popper Panarin. Popper comments that he heard Sion doesn't even know his own mother. Sion clearly remembers that Panarin used to oppress him a lot, along with Kranz, so he actually feels pleased to see Popper Panarin. Popper assumes Sion needs a beating. Kranz, standing beside him, tries to prevent things from escalating, nervously suggesting they move somewhere else. But before he can do anything, Sion slams Popper to the ground, leaving Kranz in despair. Sion then declares that he wants to speak with Kranz. Kranz immediately begins sweating in panic. Sion tells him he doesn't care what he does behind his back, but if he ever tries something like that again, he won't graduate in one piece. Kranz starts crying and quickly runs toward Popper, only to fall flat on the ground. Sion concludes that his school life here will be extremely entertaining. The scene shifts to instructor Nigrithi, walking through the library. She wonders whether Sion will become a calamity or a hero. She decides she must watch him closely. She reaches for a book, only to notice it is missing. The book is in Sion's hand, standing right behind her, asking if she was looking for this. He catches her off guard, but she pretends to remain calm and asks what he is doing there, since students are not allowed in that section. Strangely, she hadn't even sensed him. She confirms his name and asks him to hand over the book, claiming it is important for her research. Sion says he will return it and hands it to her, but keeps holding on to it. Suddenly, the book is cut in half. He says he is certain she was not looking for that book and calls her Sarika Nikrit, the leader of the Mist. She demands to know who Sion Vert really is and how he found out. When he first met her in his previous life, he thought she was an ordinary person. She used to ask how he was doing at school. She would insist that he return to his room, claiming that counseling sessions were important for his development as a student. Sion cannot understand how she expected growth from a student oppressed by his own brother. It seemed like nothing more than a cruel joke. Nukrit declares she has great interest in him, since she has never seen anyone with 84% in the darkness attribute before. He had heard the attribute was useless. She explains that only ignorant people say that. In her eyes, he has enormous potential. Sion feels a mixture of emotions as she appears eager to see what he can accomplish. For a moment, he thinks she might be someone who could guide him, but that is an illusion. Behind her glasses lies deception. Her role as an instructor is merely a disguise. She is an assassin. She hides within the academy, where nobles from every continent gather, serving as the leader of a group known as the Mist. She declares they will continue the conversation in her office. Sion is confused. She is calmer than he expected. The scene shifts to her office, exactly as he remembers. He drinks the black tea and assumes she poisoned it. Nakrit tells him not to worry. It is not fatal. It will only melt his intestines. However, Sion is immune to her poison. He drank too much monster blood in the past and survived Emily's terrible cooking as well. He suggests she try something more lethal next time, irritating her. She decides to end the conversation and demands to know how he knows who she really is. It is not just that he also knows where the orders are hidden. She expects him to claim he is part of the Mist as well. Sion looks unimpressed and asks if she needs further proof. Nikrit assumes his attribute score has gone to his head. Sion mentions that when he was passing through Shatran, everyone thought a single knight was enough to protect him. Nikrit is confused. He adds that he heard about several nobles who recently died and asks when she started her cleaning. She claims she has no idea what he is talking about, releasing her energy. Sion clarifies that he is referring to the assassinations and releases his own energy in response. Nikrit warns he will regret this. He points out that she is threatening a student. She throws a table at him, and he quickly slices it in half, thinking she might be a little insane. At that moment, she leaps back. He has proven who he is. Nikrit declares there is no member of the Mist. She does not know, and she is prepared not to let him leave alive. Realizing he has no choice, Sion attacks attacks her. She blocks, stunned by the sword he wields. That blade can only be used by Eru's chosen, the sword Karam. Cyan asks if she finally believes him. He knows she has been searching for a successor within the mist. She demands to know how he knows that. He tells her the successor is standing right in front of her and asks her to take him to Eru. The scene then shifts to a place in ruin. She has left with the boy and arrived at the location. Placing her hand on the door, she opens it. They are disguised. She notices he is not surprised by the mist's hideout. She tells him that this is the path to the altar. At that moment, he stands there alone. That subspace had been created by the god of mist, and it was far more spacious on the inside than it appeared from the outside. Cyan remembered the positions, 2 at 4 o'clock and 3 at 11. Suddenly swords shot toward him. He had already expected something like that. Masked figures rushed in to attack him. It felt like quite the welcome party. He fought them off, leaving the masked assassins completely stunned. After all, he reflected their daggers at incredible speed. At that moment, one of the masked figures used a secret art known as the blind spot formation. Even so, Cyan responded with one of his own secret arts, the deadly wave technique, a skill used by assassins that manifests killing intent into physical form. The masked figures couldn't understand how a boy like him possessed such an ability. They suddenly found themselves unable to breathe and collapsed unconscious. However, one remained standing, perhaps someone superior. Cyan then used the mist fencing technique Great Tree Decay, attempting to strike him, but the opponent blocked it. Cyan truly hadn't expected that. The opponent realized Cyan could use their specialty, but could no longer hold back and revealed herself to be Nikrit. Cyan was left confused. She said she wanted him to show what he was truly capable of. He unleashed the 8th instance of the Black Mist, Violent Barrage. She blocked numerous attacks, noticing he was familiar with both mist fencing and the Black Mist. Her interest in him only deepened. She wanted to see how far he could go. The thrill of battle was what drove Nikrit. She was practically intoxicated by it and would not stop until she killed the boy. Cyan ran, having already experienced that madness once before. Nikrit called out for him to return, asking if this wasn't what he wanted. He responded with Mist Tempest, but she blocked again. He had not inherited her twisted love for battle. She informed him that this was a divine space created by Eru, so he didn't need to worry about his energy being detected outside. Realizing that, Cyan understood he could use as much of his power as he wished, even kill her if necessary. He gripped his sword and released his energy, but something happened, and he suddenly collapsed. Kanaram had already known this would occur. He had lowered his guard for only a moment. Then Kanaram appeared in person before Nikrit, warning her not to interfere. Nikrit recognized her immediately and bowed. Karam demanded an explanation. After all, Nikrit claimed to love Eru, yet she was attacking his master. Nikrit explained she only wanted to confirm whether Cyan was truly the successor. It was her duty as leader. Karam was visibly irritated and declared that Nikrit's only responsibility was to summon her god. If she refused, the sword herself was willing to handle the challenge personally. Nikrit warned Karam that she should worry about the successor first, confusing the sword until they noticed the boy looked like he was dying. Nikrit explained that Karam had manifested through complete materialization, an inefficient process that absorbed her master's life force. Karam grew angry seeing the boy bleeding because of it, unable to believe that after drinking so much monster blood he was in that state. Nikrit then told the magical sword that she never refused an invitation to battle, especially not the chance to fight Karam. The sword realized everyone in that place was insane. At that moment, the boy stood up. He didn't look happy and asked why the sword had appeared. Karam told him to stay quiet. She intended to teach Nikrit a lesson. Nikrit replied she would be honored. Karam was not planning to show mercy, but before they could begin, Eru's voice declared that it was enough. A portal opened. He ordered them to send the successor to the altar. The boy grew excited. He was about to meet the god of shadows. Then he remembered what someone once said, that the god of black mist was purely evil, killing as if it were nothing, justifying it as being for the good of the world, claiming that people had already asked for it. Right and wrong were decided by each individual, and no one else. If someone's sense of justice could endure even after death, that was enough for Eru. What others called madness was simply his strange logic. But to Cyan, that god merely wanted to protect the weak, an absurd, stubborn deity. Cyan stepped through the portal and began climbing the stairs. Eru asked whether the boy knew him. Cyan confirmed that he did. Eru then asked what made him believe he was the successor. Cyan thought a god should be able to sense the power of the mist within him. Eru revealed there were two paths to becoming a successor. The first was for Eru to personally grant the mist stone to someone. The second was for the mist stone to be absorbed by someone it deemed worthy. Since he didn't know the boy, it must have been the latter. However, the mist stone had disappeared years ago. There was also the matter of Cyan awakening Karam, a sword whose whereabouts even the god of mist did not know. Not only that, the boy was adept at wielding the magical sword and possessed eyes far beyond his years. Eru presumed Cyan was a visitor from a time unknown to him. Cyan was confused. He had assumed Eru was connected to that. Eru informed him he was not an all-powerful god and apologized for the disappointment. He had been cast out from the ranks of divinity long ago. Cyan knew Eru was telling the truth. Eru said that made things easier. The boy didn't understand, so the god of mist explained that a perfect successor had appeared at his doorstep, lifting a burden from his shoulders. Cyan realized Eru was as lazy as ever, but not everything was perfect. Eru believed the boy had also brought something troublesome. He asked whether the magical sword was not enough. Why had Cyan also brought the holy sword? Cyan explained he had not planned to use it. He simply believed that if if the holy sword never saw the light of day, it would eventually become worthless. Eru found that odd, but said it was none of his concern. In any case, he began the succession ritual, calling his successor forward and asking what he intended to do with his power. Cyan remembered that in his past life, when asked that same question, he had answered that he would seek revenge on his brother. A foolish reply. This time, neither of them mentioned his previous answer. He didn't know why. He also didn't know whether they expected something from him. Aura told Cyan to remember not to hold on to a foolish conviction. It was almost as if he knew the boy's pathetic end in the previous timeline. Cyan admitted that he had no grand cause or belief. Showing that things would be different this time, Eru didn't understand, but Cyan made it clear that he would use that power selfishly. It was for his own sake. Eru didn't mind, since only the boy could decide what was right or wrong. Still, he wanted to know whether Cyan would regret it. It would be better for Cyan to answer carefully, because depending on his response, Eru might cut his life short right then and there. Cyan didn't care about what might happen because of his actions. He would follow no one's orders, only his own conviction. Eru thought he was planning something and wanted to know what it was, but the boy denied it. Eru accepted the answer. He didn't want to waste too much time. Quickly, he went to Karam, wanting to talk to his daughter. He pinched her cheeks, saying she had changed a lot, and asked whether she liked her master that much. Karam didn't understand why he was saying that. Eru revealed that he was very happy, while at that moment, Karam only wanted him to stay away from her. Eru had nothing to give her master at that moment, so he decided to give something to her instead. She just had to give a little kiss to the magic sword. Cyan found it adorable to see a father getting along with his daughter. Suddenly, a magical rune appeared above her. Karam didn't understand what was happening. Then she appeared in her human form. The magic sword was confused. It now had a body. Cyan realized he hadn't used his magic. It even seemed like Eru's power had returned. The magic sword demanded to know what the hell Eru had done to her, but he explained that he had only given her a bit of his life force. He didn't understand why she reacted that way, and asked whether she didn't want to marry her master. Karam became furious, shaking her father back and forth, thinking he had a death wish. He laughed like crazy. Then the scene shifted to another day, in the dormitory. Brian asked his master what all of that meant, but Cyan believed there was no way to explain it, so his subordinate would just have to accept it. The big problem was that the two of them were there, creating serious tension. Karam wanted to know why the instructor had come to her student's room so early, saying everyone would find it strange. Mikrit explained that she had come to bring him her notes, ensuring the best for her student, who was very special. But the magic sword thought the organization's leader should act more cautiously. Nikrit assumed it was none of her business. Their argument seemed endless, while Cyan couldn't believe what he was witnessing. He told Brian he would step out for a while, but the poor knight didn't want to stay alone with them as they kept fighting. Outside, Cyan felt much better, until he smelled blood. The scene then shifted to a girl falling to the ground. Her arm was injured, and she was being oppressed by 3 guys. One of them thought they should try it, and one of them took a sphere, went up to the girl, opened her mouth, and tried to force her to swallow it. Before they could do anything else to her, Aaron appeared, warning them not to treat a fellow student that way. As nobles, in her view, they should feel ashamed. The one who was about to force the sphere into the girl's mouth was Barrett Lumiel, the eldest son of Duke Lumiel's house from the kingdom of Graram. He wanted to know who she was, and she introduced herself. Barrett started laughing mockingly. He knew she was the 5th princess of the Ushif Empire. With a wicked smile, he declared it was an honor to meet her. She wasn't interested in greetings, however, and demanded an explanation for the situation. Barrett claimed she had misunderstood and thought they should tell her, but he ordered the oppressed girl to speak. The girl looked confused. Suddenly, Barrett lifted her up and asked whether the 3 of them were bothering her. Obviously, the oppressed girl denied it. Aaron said she shouldn't be afraid, yet the frightened girl begged the 5th princess to leave them alone. Barrett, completely psychotic, began to laugh and said he was getting sad. Aaron didn't care and was ready to take the girl with her, but Barrett grabbed her arm, asking if she was deaf since the girl named Leximus had told her to leave. Aaron threatened to take action, swearing on her name if Barrett continued. But just as he was about to insult her, Cyan appeared and knocked him to the ground. Aaron was surprised. Cyan was also stunned to see Leximus, not understanding anything. The scene then shifted to one of Cyan's memories, in the kingdom of Garam, at Klein Castle, where a sword battle was taking place. Cyan fought against Leximus Klein, the best swordswoman on the continent, but for some reason, after graduating from the academy, she had joined Count Clan's family, changing her nationality. She unleashed such a massive slash that it tore up part of the ground, surprising Cyan. However, Cyan appeared behind Leximus about to strike her. He slammed her hard to the ground. Cyan had been sent by the Empire to kill her. After infiltrating, he encountered her and formally dueled her. There had been no personal reason for it. Leximus had reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship without any mana. He didn't want to kill her in secret. She carried a great title. Meanwhile, Barrett's companions tried to help him up. Barrett stood and asked if Cyan wanted to join their little game. Cyan thought Barrett was nothing but an idiot. The mana sphere he had been about to force into Leximus's mouth was not something to toy with, since it could destroy the mana inside a person's body. Still, Cyan was willing to play a game with Barrett. He created a giant sphere and told Barrett to open his mouth. Then the scene shifted to Leximus, completely bandaged. Aaron informed them that Leximus needed to rest and stay in bed for a while. Leximus was grateful, not knowing how to repay them. Aaron said they had only done what they should have done. Cyan simply thought the best swordswoman on the continent would be quite different. Suddenly, Leximus asked if they knew her, because she felt they had met before. Cyan pretended he knew her, but then claimed he had been mistaken, and apologized. Leximus said he shouldn't worry. Aaron wanted to know where Leximus's room was, concerned that those idiots might bother her again. Leximus explained that she stayed in the commoner's hall. She had managed to enroll thanks to Professor Veltane, who had promised to support her financially throughout her time at the academy. However, he had been suddenly dismissed. Cyan realized that she no longer had any support there. She would have to leave the academy. Aaron was deeply saddened. At that moment, Cyan suggested that Aaron take Leximus in as her personal knight, learning swordsmanship from her. Aaron didn't understand, stating that Leximus was a boy. That was when Cyan explained to the 5th princess that Leximus was actually a girl. Leximus then clarified that she never meant to deceive her. She simply preferred short hair and boys' clothing because it was more comfortable. Aaron apologized for not noticing earlier. In any case, she wanted to know what Leximus planned to do next, thinking Cyan's idea was excellent, since that way Leximus would no longer be harassed. Living a peaceful life like that, Leximus didn't understand why she had been chosen. Aaron admitted that she didn't like being alone. Leximus thanked her and swore she would become someone the 5th princess could rely on. Aaron told her not to thank her, since it was all thanks to Cyan. But when she looked around, the boy was already gone. The scene shifted to him outside, thinking he had done enough and would leave the rest to the princess. At that moment, he understood why Leximus had abandoned the Yushif Empire. She wouldn't have lost her mana if it hadn't been for Barrett. The best swordswoman on the continent, without losing her mana, would become someone far more difficult to defeat. He found that quite interesting. He also remembered the order he had received that morning from Hallmaster Negrithi, his very first purification mission as a shadow. His first mission was already a difficult one. Still, he remembered that Negrithi believed in him. He was worried things might become even harder. Suddenly, an explosion occurred right in front of him. He assumed a demonic beast had invaded the academy. A gigantic man appeared, asking if he was Cyan Vert. The boy didn't understand how that giant knew him. The man introduced himself as Seth Charharkin, a freshman just like him. Cyan couldn't believe that lunatic was the same age as him. He had never seen him before in his life. Seth declared he had heard a lot about Cyan, how he had already defeated several demonic beasts and even survived a dragon attack. He wanted to fight him. That was when Cyan noticed the mark on Seth's chest, the crest of Sparnia, a nation located in the desert east of the continent. Sparnia had once been a powerful military country, led by its first prince, a master of magic and combat. Even the Ushif Empire had struggled when attempting to conquer it. However, the powerful nation had fallen into ruin after the sudden death of its only successor. The cause of death had been listed as illness. He had focused solely on training his muscles and neglected his health. Seth demanded that Cyan decide then and there. Cyan had never encountered Seth like this in his previous life, which irritated him. Seth wanted to determine who was stronger and wouldn't take no for an answer, certain that Cyan was eager as well. But Cyan refused. Unofficial duels weren't allowed at the academy. They needed to submit a formal request. Seth asked where to do that, and Cyan told him it was on the 3rd floor of the main hall. Seth eagerly ran off. Cyan realized the guy was an idiot. He was heading in the opposite direction, and Cyan wasn't even sure whether that was the right place to request duels. It might take some time before they met again, which would allow Cyan to focus on his purification mission for now. The scene then shifted to a man informing Zickerman that the preparations were complete. Zickerman ordered them to stop slacking off and deliver the goods to the clients. Zickerman Albus was one of the richest men on the continent, presenting himself publicly as a philanthropist who donated generously to charities. Behind the scenes, however, he managed the slave breeding market, trafficking various species. That day, he intended to unveil the masterpiece of his life. Cyan had already arrived and located his target, thinking it would be quick, but the magic sword warned him that it sensed a very complex energy. Something strange was being concealed. Zickerman looked into a cell where a creature had calmed down, calling it his golden goose. Suddenly, smoke filled the area, and one of his subordinates dropped dead. Only Zickerman and one remaining subordinate were left. Cyan wasted no time and swiftly eliminated the last guard. Zickerman couldn't understand what was happening and asked where the others were. Cyan promised to send him to the same place. He acknowledged that Zickerman had hired many people. Zickerman demanded to know what Cyan wanted, offering him money. At that moment, Cyan cut off his hand. Cyan questioned whether Zickerman didn't think he deserved to die for the crimes he had committed. He gave him 1 minute to repent for his sins. After that, the pain would end. Zickerman began to cry, certain Cyan would kill him. He claimed he was only trying to survive, selling slaves because there were buyers. Those who purchased them were the real ones at fault. Cyan hadn't expected Zickerman to be so shameless. Declaring he would end his life, Cyan attacked him with everything he had, using the 9th form Thick Mist. Afterward, he looked around the place and reached a cell. He asked the magic sword if this was it. Kurum confirmed, sensing a combination of 2 different energies. They quickly cut through the bars. Cyan was surprised. There was a woman inside, and she appeared to be dead. Cyan said she was just a human, but Karam denied it. She told him to look at what the woman was holding. It was a dragon egg. The boy decided to take it. Later, Brian asked where his master had found it. Cyan casually claimed he had found it in the middle of the street. Brian was completely shocked. That was absurd. Cyan kept thinking about the fact that Zickerman had intended to sell something as dangerous as a dragon egg. Brian grew worried about what would happen if it hatched, but Cyan told his subordinate not to worry. Dragons were massive concentrations of mana from different elements. If they continuously infused the egg with the correct elemental mana, it wouldn't hatch. Dragon eggs separated from their mother were nothing more than decorative stones. Suddenly, the egg cracked, completely defying Cyan's expectations. He didn't understand what was was happening. A light began to shine through the cracks. Then, all at once, a dragon was born in human form. Brian panicked, having no idea what they were supposed to do. Cyan realized that the creature was neither fully dragon nor fully human. He wanted to understand how that woman had managed to nurture a draconic human. It dawned on him that he had gotten himself into serious trouble. The dragon girl was already looking at him with sparkling eyes, calling him daddy. She quickly hugged the boy, leaving him completely stunned. Karam burst out laughing. Cyan had become a father at just 11 years old. In the end, he blamed everything on her. The scene then shifted to a moment earlier, when the magic sword had tried to convince her master to take the egg, saying it would be terrible if it fell into the wrong hands. Cyan had been worried something might hatch from it, but Karam assured him she had never seen a dragon born away from its mother. It was nothing more than a rock. Then the scene returned to the moment the dragon was born. Karam had never imagined witnessing something like that. Cyan was furious with her, since she had insisted such a thing would never happen. Even she hadn't expected it. In any case, a hybrid like that girl, her mere existence could cause enormous chaos. Cyan agreed with the magic sword. The situation was extremely dangerous. The dragon girl was sleeping peacefully, but a mixture between species was not normal. The world they lived in was far too dangerous for someone like her. If the Academy discovered her, the director might eliminate her to avoid external threats. Dragons were strict about their lineage. If they found out that child existed, they would try to eliminate anyone who knew about her. Cyan began to question whether he should risk such danger. If the girl was destined to live a life of suffering anyway, perhaps it would be better to end it now. Karam asked if he was certain. From the sword's perspective, it would be for the greater good. If the girl's fate was to live in misery, they agreed it might be better to end things immediately. Just then, the little girl woke up and hugged Cyan again, declaring that she loved him. He hadn't expected that. Lifting her up, he felt something different inside himself. He then told Karam that they would take care of the girl. The sword had assumed he would turn the girl into his servant. The scene shifted to Castle Vert. Margaret paced back and forth, thinking about what she should do. She believed it would be very bad if Cyan continued to live. Suddenly, Ashel arrived, catching her off guard and asking her to let him know if anything was troubling her. She claimed she was fine and thanked him, then quickly left. Ashel then requested Kellen's report. Kellen Hator informed him that 6 of their warriors had been found dead in the mountains by Velius. He presumed the rest had gone to ruin with Cyan, and that Margaret was behind it all. Ashel asked if there was any additional information, but Kellen only knew that Cyan had been placed in the royal hall. Ashel already knew that and grew furious at Kellen's inability to uncover anything about his younger brother. Kellen became terrified, seeing how angry Ashel was. He knew Ashel killed those who disappointed him. Having worked hard to reach his position, he didn't want to lose his life. He made it clear that he would go immediately, and promised not to disappoint him. Ashel ordered him to hurry, convinced that his younger brother was hiding something. The scene then shifted to Nikrit entering Cyan's room. He was confused, since there were no classes that day. The instructor wanted to know why there was a child there. The boy said it was a long story, and asked why she had come. Nikrit informed him that they had a bigger problem. She declared that Cyan had given them a huge headache, showing him a duel request. She thought he had gone crazy. He wasn't supposed to draw attention to himself. He needed to remain as discreet as possible. Cyan couldn't believe that Seth, as foolish as he was, had actually managed to arrange it. Karam saw no issue with 2 11-year-olds beating each other up. Cyan asked when the fight would take place. In 2 hours. It was sooner than he had expected. The scene shifted to the duel arena. Seth admitted he was very excited. Their combat rules required either swordsmanship or magic. The fight began. Seth was incredibly fast for someone so large, but Cyan blocked with ease. He knew he didn't need strength against Seth. He needed precision. Their clash was intense. Seth eventually realized that Cyan was dodging his attacks, using Seth's own strength against him. Cyan suddenly sheathed his sword, grabbed Seth by the leg and slammed him to the ground. However, Seth managed to brace himself and avoid smashing his face directly into the floor. Cyan found his opponent quite interesting. The audience was confused. The two were so different. Seth was enjoying the fight immensely, growing even more excited. He admitted he had lost in swordsmanship, but now he intended to win no matter what, giving it everything he had. Cyan thought his opponent was extremely annoying. Seth began releasing an absurd amount of energy. Quizel, who was watching the battle, found the two boys fascinating. They were using magic and swordsmanship simultaneously. Nigrithi told the director that Cyan had won in swordsmanship, and he agreed. But Quizel wondered what Cyan would do next, since Seth was rated 3 stars in mana classification, the highest rank among all enrolled students. Meanwhile, Nigrithi was furious with Cyan, thinking he was begging for attention. At that moment, Seth used a magical technique called Death Fist. Cyan barely managed to dodge, but his opponent wouldn't let him escape so easily, striking at him repeatedly. Seth refused to give up, and then unleashed another ability, Desert Fang. Suddenly, Cyan found himself surrounded. He knew Seth's mana had been evaluated at 3 stars, but even so, he believed that Seth should be capable of using 4-star magic. The professors who were maintaining the barrier were already struggling to keep it up. Seth wanted his opponent to stop running from his attacks like a rat, but Cyan thought that made no sense. He couldn't just stand there and take the hits. Seth believed that a true warrior doesn't keep dodging, while Cyan thought his opponent was completely idiotic. This left Seth utterly furious, and he tried to strike him again. Quizel watched closely, analyzing the situation. Nigrithi noticed that Seth had used a 4-star spell. Cyan's opponent was certain he wouldn't dodge this time. Cyan, however, chose to face it head-on. Cyan. The scene then shifted to Brian, who was testing the temperature of a baby bottle. He had experience, since he had taken care of his younger siblings. He called the dragon over to feed her, but he was shocked. Within a short time, she had already grown. The scene returned to the arena where the two were fighting. The audience couldn't see clearly, and the professors were having difficulties. The barrier was on the verge of breaking. They thought the director should take the situation more seriously. Nigrithi asked the director to stop the battle, but he told her to wait, saying that something was happening. At that moment, Cyan used the secret expansion technique, the purple. Nigrithi became desperate, trying to understand why the boy was using that technique. The bearded man thought Cyan never stopped surprising him. Suddenly, Cyan completely suppressed Seth's power. The audience was stunned. None of them had ever seen anything like what Cyan had just done. Cyan then asked Seth if he wanted to continue, but Seth gave up, unable to believe it. He had lost in both swordsmanship and magic. Cyan began to feel somewhat guilty. Seth punched the ground. He was tired of fighting weak people, yet at that moment he felt even more motivated to train. He extended his hand to Cyan, wanting to fight him again in another opportunity. Cyan shook his hand but refused. After that, Cyan returned to his room. He knew dragons grew quickly, but the girl already looked about 6 years old. It wouldn't be long before she appeared older than him. Brian didn't know what to do. Cyan thought it would be difficult to keep her a secret like that. The instructor assumed he should accept that. At some point, it would be impossible to hide the girl. She couldn't help him with that, especially since he kept showing off like he had that day. She wanted to know what the hell was going through his head. She had barely seen a dragon before, and it had already grown so much. She was certain that hiding the girl was inevitable. For now, eventually, everything would spiral out of control. Cyan had put Brian in charge of taking care of her. In any case, there was a barrier in the dormitory. The magical sword and the girl couldn't be detected. The instructor warned that this would only work if he didn't cause any trouble. She also handed him his reward for the duel, which he found rather disappointing. She left, telling him to be more careful. He couldn't draw attention to himself. Then Cyan opened the letter. It was a warning notice stating they would be expelled for misconduct. The little girl asked what they were going to do, and whether they would become beggars. Cyan wondered where she had learned to say such things, and told her not to worry. Nothing like that would happen. Brian, however, was afraid of dying if they returned to Velius. Cyan told him not to worry, as he would file a complaint. The letter had come from the director himself, and Cyan believed the director wanted to speak with him personally. He then remembered when the bearded man had asked if he wanted to join the Knights of Light. Finally deciding to live for his brother, Cyan had agreed. However, Quisel didn't think that was the best path for him, and warned that nothing good would come of that decision, promising he would meet a cruel fate. Living like someone's puppet would be horrible. Cyan wondered what the bearded man would say about his current life. Brian reminded his master that they should give the girl a name. Cyan decided to call her Nana. Brian liked the name very much. The little girl was overjoyed and said she wanted her name to be Nana Vert. Cyan didn't understand how she knew his last name. The scene then shifted to the director's office. He wrote on a piece of paper. He knew that Cyan Vert had great potential, but he had absorbed a 4-star spell using a 1-star black sphere. It was a frightening talent that required little effort from him. The old man wanted to know the limits of that student. Kundal Quisel had taught the current emperor, Dione Severus, and was also the father of the last empress, Diana Quisel. He was one of the few 9-star mages on the continent, and had devoted himself solely to educating students at the academy after the death of his daughter. There was something Cyan wanted to understand about the bearded man. He had always thought Quisel was a pacifist, yet in this life he had suddenly intervened in the royal succession struggle. Cyan didn't believe Quisel's personality had changed. As he walked, he sensed something, a barrier. The boy touched it. The old man knew he was coming, and raised a 9-star barrier to restrict the area. If this was a test, Cyan was willing to accept it. The old man smiled, curious about what the boy would do. Only a great mage could destroy that barrier. Suddenly, Cyan jumped from the window from above, landing right in front of Quisel. He introduced himself, and expressed his disagreement with the complaint. The old man acknowledged that he had lost that time, but Cyan clarified that he was referring to the letter sent by the old man. After seeing the barrier outside, he had realized something. The warning letter was just an excuse to test his talent. The old man admitted it had been somewhat aggressive, but the boy had succeeded in proving himself. However, he had no intention of removing the warning, so he suggested the boy persuade him in another way. Cyan then said he had a question, and the old man was willing to answer. Cyan asked whether he desired territorial expansion or the honor of his family. Quisel realized the boy's question was quite audacious. Still, it didn't interest him. Cyan then asked whether, after Emperor Dione's death, if the 3rd or 4th prince tried to seize the throne before the 1st prince, the old man would remain neutral. Quisel saw that the boy wasn't just audacious, he was arrogant. Cyan began to believe that the bearded man wasn't very different from his past self. In Cyan's previous life, during the struggle for the throne, Kundal Quisel had played a major role in making the 1st prince, Louis-Nel Severus, emperor. Louis-Nel was a cruel and vicious man who killed all his brothers. When Kundal opposed this, Louis-Nel accused him of being a traitor to the empire and sentenced him to death. Kundal had fought hard to bring light to someone else's future, only to be betrayed by that very person in the end. Quisel grew furious, slamming his hand against the desk and calling it complete nonsense. He demanded to know whether the boy truly believed that the peace of the last century would collapse so easily. He had thought Cyan was a genius, but at that moment he seemed like a fool. Cyan, however, found it strange. After all, the mother of the 1st prince and the 2nd princess had died of an illness, and the 3rd and 4th princes were legitimate rivals to the 1st. The Nepolis family, from which Empress Cassandra came, name, was well known for its greed and hunger for power. They would do whatever it took to maintain their position. To the boy, the empire's peace was already hanging by a thread. The day that peace ended, the academy would fall as well. Quizelle found it extremely strange that an 11-year-old child could think that way. It was as if he completely understood the current political climate. He wanted to know why Cyan was saying all this. The boy was trying to negotiate, promising to help the old man protect both his family's peace and the academy. In exchange, he only asked that the bearded man remove his warning. Quizelle began to laugh, thinking the brat had no power to help him, feeling the weight of Cyan's arrogance. He then prepared a skill called Chains of Judgment, capturing Cyan. The director was ready to fight. He declared that no matter what the boy did, if he couldn't break free from that ability, then he wasn't as talented as he claimed. The boy was willing to show the old man otherwise. The bearded man's eyes widened as Cyan used the black sphere on his own body, something the old man thought impossible. The boy was absorbing his spell. Quizelle now wanted to know just how talented Cyan truly was. Cyan then leapt free and asked if the bearded man was satisfied. The director declared he would remove the warning but asked whether the boy was certain that was what he wanted. Cyan confirmed, saying he only wished to live a peaceful student life. In truth, he simply didn't want to see the academy collapse again. The scene shifted to Brian, who was carrying a bag full of junk food. He was happy just imagining the hybrid girl eating sweets, but he noticed the street was unusually quiet, which felt strange. Suddenly, he sensed something. Looking in one direction, he ordered whoever was there to come out. A figure stepped forward, startling him. Brian suddenly vanished, and the things he had bought were left scattered on the ground. After speaking with the director, Cyan agreed to attend his classes. It was his last lesson of the day, but he was exhausted. Learning something he had already studied 30 years ago was incredibly dull. He had no mission at the moment, so all that remained was training. Suddenly Aaron appeared, asking where he was going, and pointing out that classes weren't over yet. He told her he was heading to the bathroom, but she knew he was lying. That wasn't the way to the restroom. Leximus told Aaron to behave more like a princess. Cyan then asked whether Aaron had allowed Leximus to call her by name. Aaron assumed he was trying to change the subject, but made it clear she had given permission because they were friends. She also told him he shouldn't keep calling her Your Highness. Suddenly, a young man appeared and called out to Aaron. She froze and began to tremble. He remarked that it had been a while, but he wasn't alone. Pavian and Navorian were with him. She greeted them politely. Pavian asked why she was wasting time with commoners. The two were members of the Nepellus family and didn't even try to hide their dislike for Aaron. One of them then recognized Cyan Vert. Cyan behaved politely and introduced himself. They admitted that his duel had surprised them. They were even planning to invite him to a party, suggesting they should be friends. Meanwhile, the two girls quietly began to slip away. The boys said goodbye to Cyan. Navorian approached Aaron and warned her to know her place and not be too arrogant. Soon after they left, Leximus, seeing that they were princes, wondered what was wrong with them, but Cyan disagreed. To him, they were nothing more than strangers. Aaron was confused. Cyan believed that in the face of power, bloodline meant nothing. Since they treated Aaron that way, it showed they were wary of her. They were trying to keep her under control. He told Aaron not to feel discouraged. She blushed deeply at his words. Soon after, he returned to his room. He saw Nana sleeping, but no one else was there, which he found strange. He called for the sword, which quickly appeared. Although Brian had been summoned, he didn't show up. The sword appeared in a simplified form, leaving Cyan confused. It explained that when it needed to hide its presence, it was more convenient to remain in that form. Cyan ordered Kairam to search for Brian. Kairam grew irritated, declaring she wasn't a dog, so it made no sense for her to go looking for Brian. She was certain he was perfectly capable of returning on his own. However, she soon smelled blood, which immediately worried Cyan. Meanwhile, Brian was being dragged across the ground. He had been struck down and captured by Barrett and his group. Barrett claimed he had been generous, but Brian had made him very angry. He assumed Brian was just a worthless knight and threatened to cut him into pieces and send him back to his master in fragments, all because Cyan had mocked him. Brian calmly said everything was fine, leaving Barrett confused. Brian thought the whole situation was a joke. Barrett assumed Brian had gone insane after taking such a beating. He then ordered his men to kill him. Cyan, watching everything from above, wanted to know if Barrett was really sure about what he was going to do. Brian was completely disoriented. Cyan could see that Brian was utterly screwed. Barrett, on the other hand, found Cyan's presence wonderful and declared that he would slice him in half. Cyan began to smile as well. Using the dense mist in its 8th form, he struck Barrett's henchmen at an absurd speed, defeating the mercenaries as if they were nothing. Barrett realized that Cyan was a difficult man to deal with. Unable to understand how Cyan was so strong, Barrett still swore that he would take Cyan's life right then and there, but before he could do anything, he was struck with a knee to the face and sent flying. Cyan wanted to know if Barrett was incapable of changing, which he found rather amusing. Barrett only bullied people weaker than himself. Barrett explained that it was just a hobby and asked if that was really a reason to be killed. Barrett Luamil was the eldest son of the Luamil family and could be considered the true authoritative figure in the kingdom of Graham. He was well known for his problematic behavior. In Cyan's past life, he had been exactly the same. Physical assault was the least of his terrible crimes. He had burned animals alive purely for entertainment. One day, he truly crossed the line by killing a classmate. His excuse was that she had been practicing magic. In the end, Cyan received an order from Neva to purify him. When he infiltrated the mansion where they were staying after Barrett's expulsion, he found a pile of servants' bodies hidden in the basement. After overpowering overpowering Barrett, Sion was determined to kill him in the most painful way he knew. But Barrett only laughed, telling him to kill him quickly, instead of dragging things out. His laughter echoed in Sion's mind. The man was a psychopath. He believed it was perfectly fine to lose his life, since he had already had all the fun he wanted. Still, Sion felt that killing him like that would probably not be enough. Death alone would not compensate for all the lives he had taken. Suddenly, Sion forced Barrett's mouth open and formed a sphere in his hand. Barrett begged him not to do it. Barrett warned that there would be consequences for doing something like that, reminding Sion that he was a Luamil, the most powerful family in the kingdom of Graham. Sion shoved the sphere into his mouth, thinking the idiot talked too much. He didn't care whether Barrett liked him or not, and declared that Barrett was free to hate him as much as he wanted. He couldn't care less about anything Barrett said. Barrett's mistake had been laying hands on Sion's subordinate, and so he suffered the consequences. Barrett screamed loudly. A man stood above, watching. He had never imagined that Sion was hiding so much power. He needed to inform Ashel immediately, as his plans might be ruined. But suddenly, Nycrid appeared behind him, threatening him with a blade. She had noticed the small obsessive pursuer who had been following her disciples. Meanwhile, Brian apologized to his boss. Sion found it bizarre how ugly Brian looked after that facial harmonization. He also found it strange, since his subordinate should not lose a fight. He wanted to know if that was the loyalty Brian had sworn to him. He also asked why Brian hadn't run away. He understood what Brian had wanted to do, but he thought it had been incredibly foolish. He didn't need a loyal subordinate who was dead, so he didn't want Brian doing anything reckless again. Brian apologized once more. Sion then said Nycrid could come out now. She realized he had noticed her. Sion explained that he knew because she always brought all her hall members together. She said she had brought a gift and threw one of Ashel's subordinates to the ground as if he were trash. Sion recognized the man as the one who had been following him earlier. Nycrid realized Sion had already known. She admitted that the boy was talented. He had the power to suppress a mist assassin. He also had enough intelligence to make a fair deal with the director and the mental strength to perfectly wield a demonic sword. He truly was the right choice to be the successor. But if situations like this kept happening, more people would start to suspect him. Sion promised to be careful, but he had no intention of living like an idiot. Anyone who messed with his people would suffer the consequences. Nycrid understood his side. She could see he could handle it, so she turned her back. She also reminded him not to forget the man who had been following him. Askel's subordinate wanted to know if Sion would kill him, but Sion thought killing him would be the easiest option. The young man hoped he wouldn't be interrogated, declaring he wouldn't say a single word. That was when Sion realized he was Askel's #1 subordinate. It was impossible for the boy to forget him. That man never left Ashel's side, and had even been jealous of the relationship Sion had with Ashel in his past life, proving himself to be quite strange, dangerous in another sense as well. It might even have been better for Sion to kill him right there, but since he was Ashel's subordinate, he could be very useful for Sion's plans. Sion used his magic, leaving the man completely confused. He activated the creation of the dark personality. Then the scene shifted to Leximus, fighting Aaron. The 5th princess thought she could endure it just fine, but Leximus claimed victory once again. Aaron realized she was incapable of defeating Leximus. Suddenly, they heard Brian scream. Their training was brutal. Sion attacked Brian as if he intended to kill him. At the same time, he noticed his subordinate had incredible endurance, even though others saw him as a ridiculous knight. Eventually, Sion saw that Brian was exhausted, even bleeding from the mouth. Brian told his boss he could still continue. Sion didn't know when another incident like Barrett's might happen again, so Brian needed to be able to defend himself. Brian then asked if Kellen was okay. Sion told him not to worry. Kellen was already on their side. What had happened that day was that Sion had used an ability on Kellen. It had been difficult, since he hadn't used it in a long time. The dark personality was an ability that created a shadow persona and manipulated the opponent. Sion had used it only once in his past life, so he tested it on Kellen, who stated his name and confirmed he had received orders to observe Sion, and had come to ruin because of that. Sion saw that it had worked, and asked which master Kellen served. Kellen replied that he served Ashel, but at that moment, he wanted to serve Sion instead, asking the boy to accept him. Meanwhile, the boy wanted him to listen carefully, hoping that Kellen would report everything back to Ashel without leaving out a single detail. After recalling how it had happened, Sion found it strange how Kellen's eyes shone with loyalty, hoping things wouldn't spiral out of control until Aaron arrived. Seeing that they were training together, she mentioned that they had been training there every weekend. She thought it was a good idea because of the incident that had happened. Sion asked if she was talking about last week, when Barrett was found in front of the infirmary, completely unconscious. He had been beaten until he was unrecognizable, but no one knew who had done it. Not even Barrett himself could say who it was, almost as if he didn't want to. In the end, he would never be able to use magic again. However, Leximus's reaction was something the boy hadn't expected. He thought she would be happy. Suddenly, Nana appeared from the sky, shouting, "Daddy!" Brian was in shock, because he clearly remembered leaving her with the demonic sword, but Karam had actually been snoring. Aaron picked the girl up, and Nana happily told the 5th princess that she had found her daddy, calling Cyan with overwhelming joy. Aaron did not like that at all, and wanted to know who he had done that with. Cyan felt embarrassed, and pretended he had no idea what she was talking about. The scene then shifts to Cyan's room. He ended up explaining the whole situation to them. Aaron was extremely relieved to learn that Nana wasn't his daughter. She hadn't expected Cyan to be so kind. It was quite unexpected for her. However, the boy wasn't pleased, as he believed Aaron might try to blackmail him. Brian was also in shock, since the academy army could expel his master. However, the fifth princess told Cyan not to worry, as she wouldn't tell anyone. He asked if she was serious. Argan confirmed it with Leximus, and the swordswoman agreed with overwhelming happiness. In any case, she didn't talk to anyone except them, which left Argan completely shocked. Cyan didn't understand, so Argan explained that she felt sorry for Nana. She didn't fit in with either dragons or humans. She wouldn't be accepted by either side, but Cyan wanted to take care of her. In the fifth princess's view, that was a good thing. She also wanted to visit his room sometimes, which he found strange, but she didn't want him to misunderstand. She just wanted to see the little girl. Cyan didn't really mind. He only wanted the girl to remember that this was their secret. She liked that. After that, the girls left. Aren wasn't feeling well, thinking she would have been the first to bear Cyan's child. Then Karam couldn't believe something had happened while she was asleep. She also wanted to know why her master hadn't revealed that he was living with a demonic sword, but he was very angry with her, since she was to blame for everything. Brian suggested to his boss that they take Nana out for a walk, since she was getting stressed from spending so much time there. Cyan didn't think it was a bad idea. The scene then shifts to two people with dragon wings flying through the sky. One of them suddenly stops. The woman asks what's wrong. The man explains that he felt something repulsive. He asks where they are. The girl speaking to them is named Catalina. She informs him that they are not very close. They are near ruin. The man then assumes he will have to delay his return for a while because he sensed an aura coming from there. As a dragon, he believes he cannot allow that. Next, the scene shifts to the outskirts of ruin. Brian was running after Nana, who was flying around after finding a wide open area and getting excited. Cyan liked what he was seeing. They were about 10 kilometers from downtown ruin, and he assumed it should be fine for Nana to play whenever she wanted. Karam thought the boy was starting to look like a real father and wondered why he wouldn't give Nana a real mother as well, until they suddenly sensed something. The dragon who had previously felt an aura appeared near them. Finding it repulsive, Brian grew extremely worried. Suddenly, an enormous surge of energy crashed down right in front of them. Cyan was concerned about the little girl, but Brian managed to grab her in time. Cyan told everyone to stay behind him. Out of nowhere, two dragons stood there. Cyan couldn't understand why two high-ranking dragons were in that place. The dragon judged that the disgusting stench he was sensing came from Nana, considering it utterly revolting. He was a high-ranking silver dragon named Lucian. Catalina wanted to know how a hybrid could be living there, deeming Nana a vile creature. She asked if the boy was Nana's master, and also noticed that he carried a demonic sword. Kapram wanted to understand why Catalina was treating her like a mere object. Catalina soon told the sword to be quiet, referring to her as an inferior being who had degraded herself to the point of becoming a human slave. Karam concluded that the dragon must have a death wish. Catalina quickly lost her patience, but Lucian assumed they should stop. He wasn't interested in fighting inferior beings, but he demanded they leave the hybrid with him. A half-human, half-dragon was, in his view, a horrible experiment. He offered to let them all go if they did. As he said, Cyan had no intention of complying and told the dragon to shut up. Lucian didn't understand, and Cyan declared he hadn't stuttered. Lucian began to laugh and immediately launched a massive attack at the boy. Cyan managed to dodge. Brian was worried, but Cyan assured him everything was fine and told them to get as far away as possible. Cyan even admired the technique. Lucian began releasing his energy, and Cyan immediately manifested the demonic sword. Catalina wanted to know what power she was witnessing. Lucian explained that Cyan possessed the power of exile. The day was full of surprises, but to him Cyan was still an inferior human. Suddenly, the boy appeared beside him. Lucian hadn't seen it coming, and was struck. Becoming furious, he tried to hit Cyan but failed, then used a shockwave, which Cyan easily dodged. Cyan activated a skill called Mist Slide, catching the dragon off guard, then followed with Storm Mist while Catalina defended Lucian, using a fire barrier. However, Lucian told her to stay back, as she was no match for Cyan. Still, she was fired up, declaring she wouldn't lose to a brat. She raised a draconic barrier made from 1,000 years of accumulated mana, assuming a human wouldn't be able to do anything against it. But the boy used the Mist Sword, 8 Fluttering Petals technique, and shattered her barrier. Catalina couldn't believe it. Cyan wasted no time and used his Chain of Cuts. Lucian was enraged, demanding to know who that brat was. After all, the god of mist held no authority, yet Cyan displayed immense power. The dragons wanted to know who he was. Lucian admitted Cyan was a powerful opponent. Cyan saw the dragon use polymorph, abandoning his human form and returning to his original one. Lucian became a gigantic dragon. Cyan realized something. At that moment, Lucian was more vulnerable. Cyan positioned himself directly above him. Lucian wondered what the boy was doing, until he realized the brat might know the weakness of polymorph. Suddenly, Cyan struck him with everything he had. Lucian judged that he needed to flee, but Cyan decided it was too late and kept injuring him more and more. Meanwhile, Brian stayed with the girl and wondered how his young master was doing, until he saw something and covered Nana's eyes. Cyan was eating dragon meat, and even offered some to Brian. Nana wanted some too, but obviously he wasn't willing to give it to her. The scene then shifts to Kellen informing Ashel that he believed an unknown force was supporting his brother, as the informants had been eliminated by that force. Ashel asked if that was all Kellen had to report. Kellen confirmed. Ashel found it strange, as Kellen didn't seem desperate, almost like he was a completely different person. He wanted to ask Kellen a question, which made him nervous. Kellen realized Ashel was starting to suspect him. He bowed. Ashel clarified that he needed an answer, but it wasn't personal, it was a standard ritual. Ashel. Kellen was dismissed. He was worried because at some point, he wouldn't be able to escape suspicion like he had this time. He presumed it would be best to ensure Ashel never interfered with Cyan again. Suddenly, he opened the door and ran into Emily, recognizing her as Cyan's maid. He asked what brought her there, but Ashel appeared behind him, saying he had summoned her. Ashel asked her for a favor. The scene then shifts to another location, where it was reported that Catalina and Lufzone had disappeared. They had manifested their divine power near Ruin, which was the last recorded sighting. Their stones were also shattered. Such a result could only be left after a great battle. They presumed someone had killed 2 dragons and erased the evidence with magic, but that would only be possible with the nourishing power of darkness. They believed Quazel was the only one capable of killing those 2 dragons, yet he didn't possess the elemental power of darkness. They concluded there must be someone else they didn't know about. Although they were aware of a boy named Cyan Vert, the only user of the darkness element at the Royal Academy, rumors said he had survived an attack from the evil dragon on the front lines. He was also connected to the deaths of Reynold Crimson and Zesherman Albus, with whom he had worked to bring test subjects and materials. Therefore, a girl named Lunev Rainreaver was assigned to approach Cyan Vert. Finally, the scene shifts to the Royal Academy dormitories. Arin showed Nana a cake, asking her to enjoy it. She was very attentive to the little girl. Cyan liked that very much, but he was suspicious. If the dragons sensed Nana's presence, she could suffer another ambush. However, he wanted to ensure that no one would ever lay a hand on them again. In the end, he lived purely for his own well-being, so he was going to completely ruin his idiot older brother's plans. Arin then asked the boy if something had happened. Since he seemed unusually happy, Cyan simply pretended he had just remembered a joke. The scene then shifts to the garden of the Vert residence, where Ashel was receiving Lunel Severus, the first prince. It had been a while since they had seen each other. Lunel wanted to know how long Ashel planned to stay in that estate in the middle of nowhere. He had also heard that Alice had gone on a journey. Ashel admitted he was worried about her. Lunel understood that in truth, Ashel was worried about her threatening his position of power, but Ashel judged that it wasn't the right time for that kind of subject. Lunel said that in the end they were friends, so they could talk freely. He also wanted to confirm whether Ashel's younger brother's name was Cyan, informing him that his father was interested in Cyan. Getting straight to the point, his father was considering arranging an engagement between Cyan and Arin. Lunel didn't understand why his father was so strict, protecting what he called a useless pile of trash, a daughter. Ashel presumed his comrade should calm down. The more attention the 5th princess received, the more power she would gain, making her useful to them. Lunel liked the way his friend understood him. At that moment, a knight offered Ashel more wine, but Ashel found it strange, as he had never seen that man there before. Lunel informed his friend that the knight was a gem he had found while exploring the slums. Ashel remarked that his friend had found the strangest gem possible. The knight introduced himself. His name was Boris Lame. 2 years later, the scene shifts. Alice had tried to be as discreet as possible and adapt to academic life. In the end, she had returned. Next, the scene shows her meeting the headmaster of the Royal Academy. He asked if she had enjoyed her adventures. Alice confirmed, saying she had visited Fruina. Quazel immediately declared that the place was not hospitable to humans. Alice agreed. It had taken her a year to adapt, but she wanted to understand the meaning of harmony that the bearded man had mentioned. Since Quazel had said that place would prevent her from growing, she sought to discover where she truly belonged. The old man saw that she had made her decision. Alice confirmed she would join the Knights of Light and continue her family's will. She believed someone had to take that responsibility. She was also worried about her brothers, especially Cyan, whom she presumed to be shy. The bearded man began to laugh. She didn't understand why. In the end, Quazel thought Cyan being shy was a great joke. Suddenly, Cyan appeared in the headmaster's office, saying the old man was being a bit mean. Alice was surprised to see her brother. Cyan smiled and declared that he had missed her. The two left together. Alice felt that her younger brother had changed a little. At that moment, he was the same height as her. He even teased her, saying she was the one who had gotten shorter. Cyan remembered that day very clearly. In his past life, it had been the last day he saw Alice alive. Alice asked whether her brother wouldn't be going home since it was vacation time, but Cyan judged that only she wanted him there. That was how she understood why he hadn't returned home for 2 years, though she didn't know there were more reasons. The first was that Ashel was there, along with the Duke's wife, who tried to kill him whenever she had the chance. His father did nothing about it. Returning to that place had become extremely difficult for him, so he was determined not to go back until he graduated. Then Alice asked her brother whether he was a good friend of Cran's. Cyan judged that to be impossible. She didn't understand what he meant. Cyan declared that she knew very well how Cran's treated him. After all, Cran's had once tried to kill him. The news shocked Alice. Brian, who stood beside them, could confirm it. Alice wanted to know who Brian was. Cyan informed her that he was his guardian knight. They explained the whole situation to Alice. She had been in Fruina and hadn't known anything. In any case, Cyan remained calm, placing the blame on the Duke's wife and Cran's. Suddenly, Alice sensed something. Her brother grew worried, but she wanted to know whether he had told anyone else about it. Cyan assumed Cran's hadn't thought about his actions anyway. Suddenly, Alice hugged him, asking him not to keep everything to himself, making it clear he could confide in her and that she was willing to protect him. She even wanted to spend more time with her brother, but she had to leave. Suddenly, Brian was caught off guard when Alice hugged him too, asking him to take care of her little brother. Cyan Vert directed an absurd killing intent toward him, while Brian quickly clarified he had done nothing. Alice then said goodbye. It had been a while since the boy had seen her look so angry. He then remembered a time when Kranz had been sparring with him, using wooden swords. Cyan had fallen to the ground. Kranz told him to get up, calling him an idiot. Cyan asked him to stop. After all, Kranz had already won. Suddenly, Kranz shoved the wooden sword into his face, saying his half-brother talked too much. Suddenly, Alice appeared, demanding Kranz stop. She wanted him to apologize to Cyan. The boy remembered that he had only seen that expression on her face once in his past life. He believed the Duke's household would soon be in an uproar. She needed to know the truth about her family. That way, he could protect her from that miserable future. Then Brian arrived, informing the young master that something had come for him. Cyan asked where he had gotten it. Brian explained that one was from the academy, and the other he had obtained from a caretaker. Cyan picked up only the black envelope. Brian asked if he wasn't going to take the other one, but Cyan judged that the other was from the palace. He was proven right. It even bore the imperial seal. Brian grew curious about what it was, as did the demonic sword. Cyan explained that the Empire held a banquet at that time of year. The other envelope contained an assassination order to kill Dranian Nephilis. It referred to a major incident that would take place during the palace banquet, since he was the younger brother of the current empress. It would be something truly shocking. Karam asked whether the boy intended to go. Cyan confirmed, saying he had business there. Then he realized that in his past life, someone else had also been assigned to that mission. He began to suspect that Nikrit might have liked him. Karam noticed that the other letter was from Arin and started teasing the boy, declaring he had received a love letter. Cyan lost his patience and activated the demonic sword's restriction, causing Karam to drop stiffly to the ground. He told Brian to make preparations to head to the palace. Nana stood up and told her father she was hungry. When Brian looked at her, he was shocked. Cyan was too. Nana had grown enormous. The scene then shifts to the Vert castle. Everyone was surprised that Alice had returned. Furious, she demanded to know where the Duchess was. Margaret had been perfectly calm until she heard the door open. It was Alice. Margaret smiled and asked whether everything was all right, but Alice slapped her across the face with all her strength. The servants had no idea what was happening. Margaret asked if Alice had gone mad, but Alice made it clear that Margaret was the only one who had lost her mind. Enraged, she accused Margaret of trying to kill Cyan. Margaret couldn't understand how she knew and demanded proof. Alice realized that Margaret had practically confirmed it herself by asking for evidence. Margaret claimed it made no sense for Alice to slap her without proof. Seeing the guards nearby, she ordered them to remove Alice. The guards apologized to Alice, but she leapt back, showing it wouldn't be that simple. Without hesitation, she summoned the elemental spirit Undine and attacked multiple guards at once. Margaret hadn't imagined Alice could defeat them so easily. After Alice knocked them all down, Margaret began backing away, telling her not to come closer. Alice declared that Cyan's guardian knight had confessed everything to her, that Margaret had been behind the assassination attempt 2 years ago. She said Margaret couldn't escape without Cyan doing something about it, judging that it had been naive of her. The Duchess pointed at Alice, claiming she had lost her mind for believing such nonsense. Alice told her to shut up, making it clear she would speak to her father about everything. Margaret should prepare herself. Her time was up. Alice turned her back. Margaret thought Alice was still just a foolish little girl, unaware that after everything that had happened, the Duke didn't care about anything, unless it concerned that child. The scene shifts to Duke Vert, who revealed to Alice that he already knew Margaret had tried to kill his youngest son. He asked if that was all she had to say. Alice was shocked, finding him cold and insensitive. The Duke had no intention of apologizing. After all, Cyan was fine. Alice made it clear that Cyan had been forced to fight 6 officers, and could have died if not for Brian. The Duke called her an idiot for believing Brian had saved Cyan, saying he was nothing more than a useless messenger. Alice asked if he was implying Cyan had defeated 6 officers on his own. The Duke said she didn't know her younger brother very well. He told her to take the envelope. It was an invitation to an imperial banquet. He couldn't attend, and wanted her to go in his place. He also told her to relax. She didn't need to worry about Cyan. In his view, the boy was stronger than she thought. He added that he would be returning to the barracks immediately. Alice left, thinking it absurd that she didn't need to worry about her brother. He was only 13. Suddenly, a girl stopped to greet her. Alice was delighted to see it was Cecilia. Cecilia welcomed her back with a hug and asked where she had been all that time without sending even a letter. Alice apologized. Cecilia Rian was a high-ranking knight of the Knights of Light, Alice's attendant, teacher, and friend. In the end, Alice informed her they would be changing scenery. She explained they were heading to the Imperial Palace. The scene shifts to a carriage. Nana looked outside excitedly and even spotted a servant along the road. Cyan told her to hide her tail. She tried, but whenever she got excited, it popped out again. He hoped she hadn't forgotten what he had told her. Nana was disguised as his maid, but he felt doomed. He had a bad feeling. That dragon was far too excitable. Brian suddenly stopped the carriage, saying there were bandits ahead. They demanded all valuables. Cyan thought they were unlucky and told Brian to handle them. Brian was on an entirely different level. He stepped out and struck one of them down instantly. Surrounded, he called out their leader and unleashed his serial slash technique. The weak Brian no longer existed. After defeating all the bandits, the journey continued. He had only been pretending to be weak. The scene then shifts to Nikrit. A subordinate informed her about the list of attendees attendees for the banquet. There were more than usual. Nikrit realized there was no choice. The mission had to be carried out that night. The subordinate asked if there was a reason she was accelerating Drainian Nephilis's death. Nikrit found him repugnant. He harassed women and deserved to die as soon as possible. To make matters worse, he was her fiancé. Then she noticed on the list that a child would be attending, a genius whose elemental stats were all at 20%. However, due to her fragile body, she couldn't attend many classes. She was Lunav Rainreaver, granddaughter of Regan Rainreaver, president of the Magical Society of Graham. She had never shown herself before. Nikrit wondered why she would attend the banquet. The subordinate heard that the association's president had requested Lunav's presence. Nikrit didn't know what he was planning, but she had a bad feeling about it. Something was bound to happen at that banquet. The scene then shifts to Brian walking through the city with the others. Suddenly, Nana bumps into a man who becomes quite irritated with her. She wants to apologize and make up for it, but he starts laughing, saying there's no problem. Nana then tells her father that she found a nice guy around there. Cyan realizes she's getting herself into serious trouble. He had forgotten that she knew nothing about the world, so she needed to be more careful with people. Brian then points out Nana's eyes. Her pupils had returned to normal. She was feeling hungry and even emitting an aura. If that continued, people would discover who she really was. Desperate, Cyan wanted Brian to take her to a restaurant immediately. Cyan sees that things truly aren't going well. The scene shifts again to Nana, now completely full. She ate like an ox. It was lucky the boy had brought plenty of money. Realizing how difficult it was to have a child, Cyan suddenly senses Mana and wonders what it is. Lunav appears in front of him and greets him. Cyan finds it strange that the girl knows his name, so he asks who she is. Lunav asks if he would mind her sitting beside him, but he notices she hasn't answered his question. She introduces herself and explains that she attends the same academy as him and is a second-year student. Cyan thinks she looks familiar, but has no idea who she is. He also doesn't care about students who aren't in his year. Lunav says that's fine. She's a solitary person anyway, unlike him, who is popular. Nana then asks Brian if that girl is her father's friend. Brian has no idea. Luna assumes that Cyan's guardian and maid seem very close, since they are also eating with him. She concludes that Cyan must be affectionate, contrary to the rumors. Cyan simply doesn't see any reason for them to eat separately. Still, he grows suspicious. The girl is praising him out of nowhere. He doesn't know why she's approaching him. Lunav asks if he came to the capital because of the banquet. Cyan confirms it, but wants to know how she knows. Lunav says she assumed there was no other reason for him to be there. She's actually pleased they can see each other, since she was invited as well. Cyan then asks if she was the one who sent the letter, which would mean she might be a noble. Lunav stands up, deciding that's enough, but she asks him to remember her and repeats her full name. At that moment, Cyan recalls who she is. She's the granddaughter of President Regan Rainreaver of the Graham Magic Association. In his past life, she died young while attending the academy. He doesn't know if it was due to her frailty or because of the intense human experiments the association conducted on her. Cyan grows irritated. He's getting involved with people he never interacted with in his past life. The future is constantly changing, and this is all happening on the very day of the banquet. He also clearly remembers that it was called the Banquet of Blood. Meanwhile, Erin is getting ready and asks Leximus for her opinion. Leximus declares that Erin is the cutest girl she has ever seen, though she also thinks the fifth princess has already tried on countless dresses. She just wants Erin to leave immediately, yet Erin still feels it's not good enough. Leximus assures her that Cyan will surely like the dress, which catches Erin's attention. She wants to know how he would even see her. Leximus reminds her that she sent him the invitation, so she shouldn't pretend otherwise. Erin blushes deeply. Just then a maid arrives, informing them that Prince Luenel sent a gift, believing it would look wonderful on Erin. The fifth princess did not expect to receive such a present. Leximus thinks it's amazing, and is certain Cyan will love it. Erin tells her to stop, insisting she doesn't like him. The scene then shifts to the banquet hall, filled with people. Cyan already expected it to be crowded. He still hasn't found his target. Then he senses Kellen's presence and assumes Ashel is nearby as well. Kellen confirms that Ashel is currently with Prince Luenel, and says he has something to tell him. Kellen asks if it's possible for Cyan to leave the banquet. Cyan immediately worries that something about the purification mission might have leaked. He asks what happened. Kellen says he has a bad feeling. He believes some people, including Cyan, are in danger. Ashel also told him to leave the palace before the banquet begins, since he prepared a small event. Cyan's eyes widen. He never expected that the one behind the Banquet of Blood was Ashel. Kellen doesn't want the young master to get hurt. Cyan dismisses him, though Kellen asks if he'll truly be alright. Cyan confirms, but says Kellen might also be in danger and should leave. He thinks about this so-called small event, and realizes Ashel is even crazier than he imagined. Then Karam appears, unable to believe Cyan is worried about innocent people dying. In truth, Cyan just finds it cute that Kellen is concerned. He decides to postpone the mission. Using telepathy, he tells Nikrit that the dress suits her perfectly. She wonders what he's doing. Cyan informs her they will have to delay the purification mission. Nikrit sees no reason for that, but he explains he received information that the banquet will turn into a sea of blood. Leaving her wide-eyed, he promises to explain everything later. For now, they need to check if there are any monsters nearby. Nikrit wants to be sure the information is reliable. Cyan says he knows the person behind it very well. He had a premonition before, but now he's certain. He tells her not to worry, since her fiancé will also die. She is stunned, unable to understand how the boy knows her fiancé is the target. In any case, he leaves, while Nikrit demands an explanation later. Then Alice calls out to the instructor. Alice looks dazzling. Nikrithi asks what brought her there, but Alice says she just came to get some fresh air. Nikrit realizes this is very bad. Alice will be dragged into the incident. Then the target appears, commenting that he sees two beautiful flowers walking by. Nikrit begins to realize the situation is becoming terribly complicated. Drenian Nephilis introduced himself with his psychopathic smile. The scene then shifts to Cyan, who wants Brian to do something. Brian keeps acting like a knight all the time, and Cyan wants him to stop because it's embarrassing. Cyan assumes Brian has been acting strange ever since he drank dragon blood. The boy wants Brian to inspect the underground passages of the palace, but Brian is afraid of that place. Cyan gets stressed and makes it clear that Brian should go immediately, since he has his reasons. Suddenly, Brian asks his master to look behind him. There's a suspicious person staring at him. Ready to deal with it, Brian simply flies toward the person. Cyan recognizes who it is and tells Brian to stop. He knows her very well. Emily apologizes. The scene then shifts to a staircase, where a man is descending. He tells his pawns that the time has come, and they should rise. Several hooded figures appear. The scene changes to Erin. She's a bit upset because she made an effort to invite Cyan, yet she hasn't seen him anywhere. Then Lunav approaches her, saying it's an honor to meet her. Erin knows who Lunav is, and Lunav feels even more honored when she realizes Erin remembers her. Art sees no reason to forget the genius of the Kingdom of Graham and welcomes Lunav on behalf of the Empire. Lunav thinks she's very kind and wishes Cyan would notice that too. Art sees as she also knows Cyan. Lunav confirms, saying they met yesterday. Artsy doesn't like that very much and assumes they're close. Lunav realizes her suspicion was correct. Arin is in love with Cyan and asks her directly. Arin's cheeks turn red. Suddenly a woman screams, calling for the guards. Out of nowhere, one of the hooded figures decapitates her. Arin can't believe that such a monster managed to enter the palace. The hooded figure then finds the one he was looking for, Arin. The scene shifts to Nana introducing herself to Emily, saying she's Cyan's maid. Emily feels miserable. Nana is younger and cuter than she is. She wants to know if her master has truly abandoned her. Cyan refuses. He hasn't given up on Emily. However, he asks if it was really Ashel who brought her there. Emily explains that Cyan's older brother wanted her badly and even offered her a job. Cyan finds it suspicious. In the end, Ashel wanted her to work as his maid that time. When Cyan went to the academy, she was left all alone. Emily says she refused because she was waiting for the boy to return. Cyan asks if she's sure. She confirms, but since Ashel brought her there, she believes he hasn't given up yet. Seeing how dangerous things are outside, Cyan asks Brian to watch over Nana and Emily because he needs to leave. In his past life, Emily wasn't there. Ever since he caught Kellen spying on him, he had suspected that Ashel was planning something. He just doesn't want that damned Ashel to dare mess with his people. Emily then takes out a bow tie Ashel gave her, asking her to give it to Cyan as a gift. She feels stupid for coming all this way and forgetting about it. However, Nana smells something strange coming from the bow tie. The scene shifts to Ashel informing Prince Luenel that it has begun. Luenel smiles and says the day has finally come. Knowing how much effort his comrade put into this, Ashel believes their gifts must have been delivered. He considers Boris very useful. They'll make great use of him after this to change the Empire, which has been soaked in peace. Ashel wants to show them what the Empire truly needs. Luenel begins smiling like a psychopath. The scene changes back to Erin, telling everyone to evacuate and leave things to the guards. Lunav thinks Erin should evacuate first, but Erin wants to help the civilians. Lunav decides to step in as well, saying she'll help too. Erin is grateful. Several guards try to stop just one hooded figure, but they're caught off guard when more of them appear. Things spiral out of control. To make matters worse, there's a high-level demonic beast called Mandragoras. It's not a creature easily encountered. The captain of the guards believes it's impossible for them to win. They are practically facing death. Nikrit declares she will buy time for the guards to evacuate the civilians. The captain of the Imperial Guards is surprised to see an academy professor stepping forward. Alice uses a swift blade technique and strikes one of the hooded figures, showing she has joined the fight as well. She orders the guards to do as the professor says, and the captain relays the command. The creature charges forward at full speed. Then both of them realize they are not the target. The creature is heading toward the fifth princess. Nigrithi warns Erin to be careful, because she is the target. Before she can be struck, the captain appears and shields her. A drop of blood splashes onto her face. The captain, named Morris, is hit with full force. The fifth princess begs him to get up, but he is severely injured. She begins blaming herself. Meanwhile, Alice uses her water explosion technique, launching a series of attacks along with a skill called Wind Spear. Seeing Alice combine spells, Lunav confirms that she truly is incredible. At that moment, Lunav urges Arin to retreat quickly. Arin doesn't want to leave Morris like that. Lunav warns that the creature will attack again, but the guards are determined to hold it back. They are willing to make the captain's sacrifice worthwhile by stopping the creature somehow. Lunav calls out to Erin, and the fifth princess finally agrees. She will never forget Morris's sacrifice. Arin then uses a shadow armor ability to protect the guards. She knows the roots of the Mandragoras carry lethal poison. Just touching them could mean death. At least now they are protected from the venom. She just doesn't want anyone else to die. The guards thank Her Highness and charge toward the Mandragoras, determined to fight for the princess. They manage to cut the creature, but it is extremely strong and strikes back. At that moment, Alice uses her freezing ability and tells Arin to leave. The princess asks who she is. Alice introduces herself and shows Arin the way out, while Nikrit attacks the Mandragoras. As As an alchemy instructor at the academy, if Nikrit fought with a dagger, she might reveal who she truly is. But at that moment, that doesn't matter. There are many dead guards around them. She uses the 8 floating petals technique, dealing massive damage to the mandragoras. The surviving guards notice the creature has stopped moving and think they should retreat and launch another attack. Suddenly, the hooded figure appeared behind one of the guards, but Nikrit was faster, striking the hooded man and telling them not to lower their guard. Nikrit was buying time for Alice to get the princess to safety, though she felt anxious. As Arin ran, she began thinking that Alice was Cyan's sister, and she hoped the boy was safe. Just then, a monster appeared in front of the 3 of them. Alice realized they knew where they were. She wondered if she could defeat that thing alone, since it was a high-ranking night tracker. At that moment, Arin used a chain trap while Lunav wielded her fire spear. They struck the night tracker, and Alice was surprised. The 2 girls were willing to help her. She didn't want to be defeated in front of 2 juniors, so she decided to face the creature with everything she had. She used a protective ability, shielding the 2 girls from the night tracker's attack. She was determined to make the creature regret appearing before her, unleashing her water blade ability. Then the scene shifted to where the mandragoras were. Nikrit wasn't sure if that had been the last one. She removed one of their masks, thinking they had come from outside, but she felt something strange, until she realized it was actually a puppet. It was a spell that brings the dead back to life, controlling them like puppets. A forbidden and difficult spell that requires an immense amount of mana to control everything. For them to be so prepared, it couldn't have been just one individual. Nikrit believed they were trying to start a war. Then the scene shifted to the Emperor knocking down one of the hooded figures. He was growing tired, driving his sword into the ground. Luenel pretended to be concerned for his majesty, and Ashel was pretending as well. The Emperor declared he was fine. He had only overexerted himself a little. Even so, the 2 helped him stand. The Emperor wanted them to take care of the others, as the castle knights would handle the rest. Ashel told his majesty not to worry. They would remain by his side. The scene then shifted back to the girls. They had defeated the night tracker. The problem was that the hooded figures kept coming without end. Then the scene shifted to Emily, holding the gift Ashel had sent to Cyan. Brian had a bad feeling about it. Emily couldn't understand why. Brian remembered that Ashel had never given his master a gift before. He felt that Cyan harbored deep resentment toward Ashel, something far greater than a simple family grudge. Just then, Nana informed them they needed to run. Brian didn't understand. She explained that something dangerous was coming their way. Emily wanted to know what had happened to Nana's eyes. Suddenly, an explosion occurred. Brian told Emily to flee at once. A high-ranking monster had appeared, a behemoth. Meanwhile, Drenian Nephilis was running in desperation, convinced he was about to die. He had thought he would be faster than anyone there, but he hadn't expected so many monsters to appear in front of the gates. He only wanted to escape the lesson safely, so he could see his beloved little servant, Lily. Just thinking of her made him want to see Nigrithi completely broken as well. He demanded to know whether the guard was certain. The back gates were secure. The guard couldn't confirm. He only assumed they were. Drenian Nephilis didn't like that answer. At that moment, he lost his head to a hooded figure. Everyone was left in shock, believing they would die there, but Alice appeared and used her water explosion, telling Lunev to make the next move. Lunev used her freezing ability, astonishing the guard. They killed the monsters in an instant. Though the others didn't know who they were, Alice introduced herself but reminded them it wasn't over. They needed to protect the 5th princess. Arin said she was fine, but Lunev collapsed to the ground. She had pushed herself too hard but didn't want Arin to worry, assuring her she would recover soon. The problem was that the next wave would arrive shortly, so she told Arin to leave. The guards prepared to protect their highness, taking formation while Alice provided support. They needed to hold out until the battle ended. Alice asked them to lift her if necessary, declaring she would do everything she could to stop the chaos. She knew that even if she kept defeating them, they were coming from somewhere. It was as if they had known their location the entire time. More hooded figures appeared. At that moment, the gift given by Luenel glowed around Arin's neck. The scene then shifted to Brian, trying to defend Emily from the behemoth. Brian knew that for a high-class monster to appear there, something must be happening, just as his young master had said. Until now, Cyan had always stood by him to protect him, but now it was time for Brian to protect them on his own. He was the only one who could protect the 2 of them. However, Emily was too close and distracting him. The behemoth roared at him, and Brian told Emily not to move from behind him. He struck the behemoth, gaining confidence, but was hit shortly afterward. Emily asked if he was alright. Brian confirmed he was, and told her not to worry. He wouldn't let that creature scratch her. Suddenly, the behemoth was right in front of him. Brian assumed things had gone terribly wrong when the behemoth was suddenly struck. Emily's eyes widened. Nana revealed her wings and attacked the creature. The scene then shifted to the hooded figures advancing toward Arin, who was using her magic in some way while everyone else fought. Alice felt like it would never end. Whoever orchestrated the attack had calculated everything. The knights would soon grow exhausted. She needed a solution. That was when she realized the hooded figures were undead. They were nothing but puppets puppets resurrected with dark magic. She tried to remember what opposed dark magic. The first thing that came to mind was the god of light, Lumendel, and his light magic. She believed that was the only way. She asked Aaron to channel her mana into her sword. Aaron said she couldn't because the knight's protection would cease if she did, but the knights told her not to worry. They could hold the line for a while. Aaron then used her Blessings of Light ability on Alice's sword. She wanted to combine two different types of mana, which was difficult, but she added spirit magic as well, hoping everything would flow smoothly like butter. She wasn't sure if it would work, but she was willing to take the risk. Meanwhile, Cyan realized that the puppets and Mandragoras assisting Ashel meant that was when Boris had become his brother's subordinate. The magic sword hadn't expected a human of that era to wield ancestral magic. Cyan confirmed that Boris was very skilled in it. He empowered the monsters with disorientation stones. The mana within those stones attracted monsters. The entire place had turned into a bloodbath. However, Cyan thought it might be better for him to change. Then the scene shifted to a spirit appearing before everyone. Lunav recognized it. It was Marion's spirit. She also knew that mana cannot be mixed together, so she believed Alice wouldn't be able to hold it for long. If she didn't stop, she would end up dying. Marion then asked why Alice was sacrificing herself. Alice didn't know any other way to stop those creatures. Marion thought it was disgraceful, a cruel fate for a child who had been blessed by Fruana. At that moment, the puppets advanced toward Alice. Marion found it unpleasant and wished those things would get out of Alice's way, destroying all the puppets at once. Lunav knew it still wasn't enough. The puppets kept rising again. Aaron begged Alice to stop immediately, as she was overexerting herself, but Alice felt she had to put an end to it, so she invoked the authority of the spirit of King Rangamayant. Just as she was about to strike the puppets, Cyan suddenly appeared and touched her hand, shocking everyone. No one knew who he was, since he wore a mask identical to the ones the puppets were using. Alice realized his aura was completely different from theirs, and she didn't understand the black mist surrounding him. She couldn't move and grew terrified, fearing she would be consumed by the mist. Marion then said her farewell to Alice, believing it was the end of her journey. Alice collapsed, assuming the mist had caused it. She had no strength left in her body. Before fading, Marion reminded her that Froina would always receive her with open arms. Aaron couldn't understand what was happening. Lunav explained that he had blocked the mana that was manifesting Marion's spirit. She didn't even know if that man was human. Alice then told everyone it was over, as the hooded figures began moving toward Cyan. Suddenly, he destroyed all the hooded figures at once. Alice was stunned that the man she didn't recognize was on their side. After making his move, Cyan realized that all the hooded figures were heading toward the princess's group, as if drawn by something extremely powerful. He asked the magic sword if she sensed any special mana coming from that group. Karam mentioned Lunav, but he replied that Lunav was always like that, so it wasn't her. Karam then said she sensed a mana, similar to that of a monster coming from Aaron's necklace. Cyan asked the magic sword for a little help, and used his creation ability, manipulating space itself. It was the domain of mist. The guards grew anxious, unsure of what might lurk within the fog. The surroundings changed completely. Suddenly, the puppets became trapped, unable to understand what was happening. Alice was shocked by the black mist, and by the way it consumed the puppets. Then everything fell silent, as if nothing had happened. Aaron wanted to know who the masked man was, who had killed all the puppets. Lunav collapsed. Cyan appeared beside Aaron, who was worried about Lunav, and placed his sword at her neck, terrifying the guards and prompting them to order him to release the princess. Somehow Aaron felt he was familiar. At that moment, a knight attacked Cyan. Alice worried for Aaron, but Cyan turned into mist, leaving the knight stunned. The fifth princess panicked, demanding that Cyan move away from Lunav. She used her divine stinger ability, but couldn't hit him because he had become mist. Cyan told her not to worry, he wouldn't hurt them. He explained that he had destroyed the jewel because the monsters were being attracted by it. He also told them to head to the front gates and leave the palace. He had already cleared the path. The place was returning to normal. The knights worried about Aaron, but she only wanted to know who the person was who had helped her, as well as Alice and Lunav's condition. They were fine. Alice prioritized keeping the girls safe, deciding to ask about the mysterious helper later. However, Lunav somehow already knew it had been Cyan. The scene then shifted to the behemoth, lying completely ruined on the ground. Emily was terrified. Brian said he had never seen Nana like that before. Nana radiated a different kind of energy. Cyan recalled that in his past life there had been a rumor about the blood banquet incident, which had resulted in countless deaths. The rumor claimed that the one behind it was Irene Severus, who had been blinded by her desire for power. It had been caused by a disorientation stone. Cyan was certain that either Ashel or Luanel had given it to her. After that incident, they had been named heroes of the Empire, benefiting from the tragedy. Karam couldn't believe how despicable they were, sacrificing their own people for personal gain. Cyan declared that it was nothing compared to what they would do in the future. In any case, he felt guilty as well, since he had also assisted in other attacks. The magic sword asked if he was leaving already. Cyan confirmed he was sure Nana was waiting. The palace knights would handle the rest. Karam also mentioned something that bothered her about the princess's necklace. She brought up Emily, his maid, saying she too was approaching the stone. Cyan was shocked. The scene shifted to Nana, who liked the scent, and Emily carried that scent. Brian struggled to control the chaos. Nana was acting like a monster. He didn't understand why she was only going after Emily, but he couldn't hurt her either. With a bizarre appearance, Nana revealed she couldn't endure it anymore. Brian felt desperate, until Cyan suddenly appeared in front of them, and was attacked by Nana herself. Karam grabbed the tie from Emily's hands and threw it to the ground. ground, stomping on it with force, leaving Emily in despair. The demonic sword ordered Nana to calm down. Nana then came to her senses and began calling out for her daddy. She couldn't believe she had hurt her father. Sion reassured her that everything was fine, knowing she hadn't acted of her own will. He urged them to leave quickly, judging that the place was a mess. The scene shifted to Luenel, confused, since the area was supposed to be filled with monsters, yet it was quiet. The Emperor saw no monsters. Luenel admitted to his father that he felt relieved, as it seemed the situation had been resolved. Ashel, however, did not like what was happening at all. Suddenly, Arine appeared, calling out to her father. The Emperor was happy to see his daughter safe. Arine embraced him, relieved that he was still standing. The Emperor declared he was fine, thanks to the two who had been with him. Arine looked at Luenel, finding him very suspicious. Luenel coldly said he was glad she wasn't dead. She had many questions for him, but assumed they should wait. Alice then greeted His Majesty. The Emperor thanked her for protecting his youngest daughter, and promised her a reward. Aaron soon noticed Ashel and Luenel talking, smiling at each other. Suddenly, Luenel pointed his sword at Lunev. He accused her of being responsible for the incident, declaring she was under arrest. Alice demanded to know what nonsense he was spouting. The Emperor presumed his son was going too far, and ordered him to lower his sword. Aaron declared that Lunev had saved countless people by her side, but Lunev claimed it was merely a trick, stating that the Kingdom of Graham had only been waiting for an opportunity to attack the Empire of Ushif, and that her objective had been to commit assassinations and sow chaos within the Empire. Lunem noticed that he spoke as if he had proof. Ashel stated that on the previous night, a suspicious mana aura had been detected in the place where Lunem was staying. The Emperor wanted to know if that was true. Aaron didn't want her father to listen to them. Lunem said that although they had invited them in the name of peace, he had been keeping an eye on them all along and promised to gather the evidence. The Emperor simply agreed. Lunev couldn't understand whether this was a trap or something her grandfather had intended to happen. Lunev Rainver was arrested along with her group from the Magic Society of Graham for investigation. Leximus, who had been separated from Aaron, worked with the other guards to protect the nobles. Draenian's funeral was shown in the streets, along with the others. Cyan had managed to prevent a massive number of deaths, but he couldn't change the fact that the banquet would still be remembered as the blood banquet. In any case, he was injured, and Alice treated his wounds. He told everyone that he had simply escaped. He didn't reveal that he had helped. Alice mentioned that a mysterious person had appeared and greatly aided them, but she was still very curious about who it was. She even thought his height was similar to her brother's. At that moment, she noticed how strong Cyan had become. His body was also covered in scars, making her imagine he had been training hard. Just then, Ashel entered the room, noting that Cyan had recovered well and that the two of them seemed close, which made him jealous. Cyan simply thanked his brother. Alice noticed how cautious Cyan was around Ashel, and she wondered whether Cyan was also aware of Ashel's vile and cruel side. Ashel explained that he was there because of the investigation. He had found a bracelet embedded with disorientation stones in Lunav's room, claiming it had been a gift given to her. Cyan remarked that whoever had given that gift should be on the list of suspects. Ashel confirmed that his brother was right. He then asked if Cyan remembered receiving anything during the banquet. Cyan told him he didn't remember. In turn, Cyan asked whether Ashel already knew who had given Lunav the bracelet. Manipulative as ever, Ashel said he had heard there was a merchant at the banquet who had been found dead that same day. Once again, he asked whether his younger brother had received anything. Cyan immediately realized his brother was trying to create a scapegoat. He was fully aware that Emily was in danger. Cyan then pretended to have a headache and apologized, saying he still wasn't feeling well. Alice explained to Ashel that Cyan had lost a lot of blood and asked Cyan to lie down and rest. Ashel decided to leave. Even so, Cyan told his brother that he didn't remember receiving anything, and even if someone had tried, they likely wouldn't have survived that hellish situation. Ashel thanked him for the answer. At the same time, he assumed the monsters had killed Emily, which was good. He wouldn't need to kill anyone else. Still, he felt embarrassed, believing that had been his moment to eliminate Sion. At that moment, Sion released his killing intent, and Alice saw it and slapped him, telling him to lie down immediately. Elsewhere, a maid was bleeding heavily. Not understanding why she was being beaten, she insisted she hadn't spoken. She had also given the necklace to Aaron, but didn't even know its purpose. She begged the one beating her to believe her. Nevertheless, Boris declared he had to do it. It was still his part to play. The more he thought about it, the more unpleasant it became. He had prepared everything, and yet it had gone wrong. He ended her life and turned his back. Then he remembered that a corpse had been discovered not long ago, which could be problematic. He had to make sure it wouldn't happen again, so he summoned a gigantic monster and had it devour the maid's body. The scene shifted to Emily, who was sitting calmly. Brian approached her with some apples. She thanked him and began eating. Brian assumed the weather was nice, but Emily wanted to know how long they would have to stay there. Brian reminded her they could only leave when their master told them to, so they needed to wait. Brian recalled when Cyan received Ashel's gift. Cyan had clearly disliked it, certain that his older brother wanted to complicate things even further. Suddenly, an energy began to emanate. Cyan explained that both the palace and the Vert estate were not safe for Emily, so she needed to hide. He told Brian he had business to take care of, so the protection of Emily and Nana would now be his responsibility. Brian had never seen his master make that kind of expression before. He was willing to help him no matter what. Emily asked how Nana was doing. Brian said she had been very sad for a few days, but seemed better now. Emily realized that many things had happened to her master while she had been away. Nana also surprised her. She had never imagined imagine that Nana was actually a draconic human. Now that she knew, Emily was determined to help. She suddenly grew nervous and clung to Brian's arm, making him flustered again, but she promised they would do their best for their young master. Brian felt very happy and agreed. The scene then shifted to Lionel, furious with his father. They had clear evidence, yet in the end, the Emperor wanted to release the suspects. Diane warned Lionel to watch his tongue, making it clear that he had already made his decision. Lionel claimed his father was too soft, and that it was impossible to rule like that. At that moment, his father lost his patience, and launched a strike that completely destroyed the wall. Dino declared that ruling the entire continent was a fine ambition. However, they did not share borders only with the Kingdom of Graham. There was also the Demon Kingdom, as well as Sparnia and Fruina. If they made even one enemy in Graham, they would no longer be able to hold back the Demon Kingdom, and the entire continent would suffer under the monsters. Even if he could manage it, he knew it would require the sacrifice of countless lives, and someone who does such a thing is not an emperor but a monster. He concluded that his son lacked common sense. Lionel still tried to argue that releasing the suspects despite clear evidence was wrong. Dione then asked whether his son was referring to the disorientation stones, catching the prince off guard. He hadn't expected his father to know. Dione said his son's face said everything. Even as a child, Lionel never gave up on something he wanted. Lionel grew nervous and pretended not to know what his father was talking about. But the emperor had had enough. He demanded to know how his son had turned out that way, stating clearly that Aaron was more fit to rule than he was. Dio didn't even want to look at Lionel's face anymore, and ordered him to leave. Lionel began trembling and thought of the fifth princess, placing all the blame on her. Like a psychopath, he stormed to where Aaron was staying, and punched Leximus. Aaron was completely confused. She demanded to know what he was trying to accomplish. With a completely unhinged demeanor, Lionel declared he was there to have a conversation with his precious sister. Leximus warned that even if he was the prince, if he continued acting like that, she would have to take action, since she was Aaron's subordinate. Lionel pitied the girl, calling her nothing more than a parasite, and declared that he would execute her entire family, erasing her bloodline from the earth, leaving Leximus in shock. Aaron thought he should stop that immediately, so she wanted to know if he wanted to hear something from her. Lionel noticed that Aaron was different. She was no longer the same. Then Aaron declared that she had not received anything from him, leaving Lionel wide-eyed. She clearly remembered that she had handed the jewel to her father. Dione knew that it was no ordinary jewel. It was a disorientation stone from the Black Blood tribe, used to control forbidden dark magic. It had been used to control monsters, and the Emperor informed them that someone in the castle had brought that secret inside. The black market merchant Gilbert and the maid Marilda had been seen holding one of those stones for a while, but they eventually disappeared. The two of them had been in constant contact with Lionel. That Gordy wanted to know whether his daughter had truly received nothing from Lionel, whether he had not been the one to present her with that necklace. She denied it. She declared that she had received nothing from her brother. In any case, to her, the Emperor already knew who had brought those jewels into the palace, so Lunov was no longer a suspect. She asked her father to release Lunov, since she had helped a lot. Erin knew that if she said Lunov was involved in that incident, she could not predict what he might do to the people around her. She did not want to accept that. Wanting to prevent the people she cared about from suffering again in the future, Lionel then confirmed that he had never given her any gift. Eliren said she had told their father the same thing. Lionel found her attitude strange, as if she had done something wrong, and wondered whether he should deal with her subordinates first. She apologized and informed him that she had invited someone at that moment. Lionel could not understand who could be more important than him, until Cyan appeared. She made it clear that Cyan was more important to her. Cyan apologized. He had not wanted that to happen. Lionel was stunned. He had not even sensed the boy's presence. Cyan made it clear that he had heard everything. Lionel wanted to know how long the boy had been hiding there. Cyan explained that he had not been hiding. He simply did not have a strong presence, which obviously was a trait of an assassin. Lionel was outraged that Cyan still had the nerve to speak in front of him. The boy asked what Lionel intended to do to him. Lionel began to suspect that the rumors of the engagement were true, so it would not be wise to make that brat an enemy. After all, Cyan was the son of his father's friend. He was also irritated by what he had heard from Ashel, remembering that he had told Ashel he wanted to remove Aaron from the throne, but he wondered why Ashel had not eliminated his younger brother. Ashel admitted that his brother stressed him out, and that he was certain Cyan was hiding something. At that moment, Lionel understood Ashel. Cyan somehow managed to intimidate him, so he decided to back down. Since the misunderstanding had been clarified, he chose to leave. To Cyan, Lionel's personality did not seem so bad at that moment, though in his past life, Lionel had been known as the Mad Emperor. Lionel also apologized to Leximus. After he left, Leximus thanked Cyan, feeling relieved, but Cyan assumed that Aaron had controlled the situation. The princess disagreed, until she noticed that Cyan was sitting beside her, which made her a bit embarrassed. Cyan explained that his legs were hurting, so he had sat down. In any case, she was surprised. Leximus thought Cyan was dense, because he could not see that Aaron liked him. In the end, Lionel believed the two were together, so he left at that moment. The scene then shifted to Lionel, furious, asking Ashel how they would resolve the situation, since the one who should have been dead was alive, and his father no longer trusted him. Lionel believed he should have become the savior. Boris appeared near the two of them, revealing that there had been some success, and introducing himself to Lionel, who did not know him. Lionel wanted to understand why Boris had taken so long to appear. Boris explained that he had been finishing a mission given by Ashel. Ashel had heard that Emily had disappeared, and wanted to know what the success was. Boris informed them that they had underestimated the people around Princess Erin. He showed them the mana crystal used by her friends during the battle. Most of that mana was ordinary, but he pointed out a very rare kind. It was considered something very sinister and dangerous. Boris told them that it was the mana of the demonic sword, meaning that Erin had a friend wielding a forbidden demonic blade. The scene then shifted to an extremely ugly dish. Poor Brian did not understand anything, since it was nothing like what Emily had described. He also could not understand how Nana and Cyan were calmly chewing it. Emily looked completely happy, even after making such a mess of a dish. In the end, Cyan was already full. He also could not stay any longer, as he did not want his older brother to notice. He just wanted to know if they were fine, informing them that it was not yet time to return, and that there were guards nearby, making it safer than anywhere else. He then turned his back to them, wanting them to take care of each other. Suddenly, Nikrit appeared, demanding that Cyan explain everything. After all, he knew about the blood banquet and about her fiancé's death. It was as if he knew the future. He would have to choose his words carefully, otherwise she would consider him an enemy. Nikrit wanted to know who Cyan Vert really was. Cyan expressed that Dragna was an album of purification anyway, and he wanted to understand why she cared. Nikrit declared that he could be a spy from another faction. He asked what she would do if he were a spy. Nikrit said he was stating the obvious, and immediately drew her dagger, trying to attack him. Karam appeared, blocking the strike. Nikrit saw that the demonic sword would interfere. Karam realized that the crazy woman never learned. Nikrit was delighted to fight against the demonic sword, but Karam was already growing irritated with her. They began to battle, and Karam used a skill called adamant. Nikrit knew the attacks were powerful, but treated it simply, thinking that as long as she dodged, everything would be fine. The power was immense, and she knew that if she were hit, she might die. Karam grew more excited during the fight. Nikrit was enjoying it, but Cyan used control over the demonic blade, causing Karam to collapse stiffly onto the ground. Karam was furious, since she had finally been having fun. Cyan was annoyed. They were making too much noise, and the place would be discovered like that. So he was going to ask Brian and the other two to move elsewhere, allowing the two fighters to finish what they had started. He went inside and told them to pack their things. Lunav was also there. Brian apologized to his boss, saying she had appeared suddenly. Cyan was surprised. She had passed through the barrier and the mist sentries. He wanted to know how she had known about that place. She was far better than he had thought. Lunav explained that it was one of her talents, and that he should not worry, since she was the only one who knew about that place. Then she remembered that the location might actually have been discovered because of the noise outside. In any case, Cyan wanted to know why she was there, since he did not recall doing anything that required her gratitude. Lunav knew everything, recalling the day he had entered inside her, leaving everyone in shock, completely misunderstanding what she had said. Cyan assumed she had been unconscious. Lunav showed that she could use mana of all elements, fusing and altering them whenever she wished. She could also track an individual's mana. She explained that it was a gift from her grandfather. Cyan assumed it was a curse, and warned that her body was injured. Lunav then realized she had been right. It was him, but the boy wanted to talk somewhere else. The others began gossiping about it, and Cyan, irritated, demanded that everyone have their bags packed by the time he returned. Emily asked where they were going, and Cyan informed them that they were heading to Ruin Academy. Emily was thrilled to hear that from Cyan, already imagining the terrible dishes she would make there. Brian immediately felt like he was in a horror movie, and Emily noticed that his expression had changed. Afterward, Lunav explained to the boy that she had spent most of her life in a cold, dark place, enduring countless painful experiments. She had borne everything in silence, because that was her duty, having been born as the granddaughter of Regan Rainreaver. Lunav wanted to know if he also had a duty, but he denied it. She did not understand why he had not revealed that he had saved everyone, but he believed he would gain nothing from it, only more trouble. He also asked whether she was unaware of the reason, until she mentioned the element of his mana. At first she had thought it was darkness, sensing it on the day they met at the restaurant. Cyan had not known that she could perceive someone's mana element with just brief contact. He had never witnessed that in his past life. On the day she was defeated, Lunav had received a trace of his mana, and she showed it to him. That was when he understood why she had approached him. The boy assumed she would take that information to her grandfather, but she denied it. She would gain nothing by revealing it, only more trouble. Cyan then asked if she was rebelling against her bloodline. Lunav realized he still had not understood. In the end, she embraced him, thanking him for easing some of her pain. Lunav was like an overflowing pot, dealing with mana of every element, a chaotic mixture. Someone had tried to put a lid on that pot, attempting to stop her from losing mana, but she had overflowed for so long that she had begun to extinguish the flames of her own life. Eventually she would have died. Cyan had pierced a hole hole in that lid, because he saw Lunav as someone's puppet, and that frustrated him. He did not think she needed to thank him, and asked her to keep everything a secret. He also did not want her to push herself so hard. Then the scene shifted to Graham's council. Inside the director's office, the old man was indignant after learning that Lunav had been stopped while on her way to meet him. He ordered his subordinate to track her down and bring her there immediately.